What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Hearthstone Team Story Playoffs. We are finally getting on to the playoffs after a grueling regular season. I am D2, with me is Jay, and $45,000 are on the line here, Jay, as we start off in the stepladder playoffs with EDG versus Veteran.
Yeah, it's lots on the line. These guys have come a really long way, but after starting out with 9 teams, what feels like a really, really long time ago, we are down to just 4. And so today, yeah, it's going to be Veteran versus EDG in the first game of the stepladder playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know how stepladder works, basically the first seed just goes all the way to the finals. They get 2 buys. And the second seed throughout the regular season, this team with the second best record, which is OMG. E-Star was the first seed, by the way. OMG gets the second seed. They advance to the semifinals by virtue of that first bye. And we today have the third place team, which is EDG, versus the fourth place team, which was Veteran. Veteran squeaking into the playoffs on the very last day there. And let's introduce our players. The person with the microphone first, who has since passed it off on the very left, is Xiaoguqi. Talking right now is Peggy, very outspoken character and often basically a frequent caster. To his right is Xiayan, and to his right is popular streamer and getting more into the competitive scene is Magic Wind. So a pretty decent lineup, though we'll talk about later how we think that maybe they're the slight underdogs here. But yeah, a lot on the line, $45,000 like I mentioned. And how that works is this match right here is worth $5,000. The loser gets nothing. The winner advances to the next round where they'll get at least $5,000 if they finish in third. And if you get second, it's $10,000. And if you get first, it's $30,000. So it really ramps up. And I was mentioning to you, Jay, before we started the cast that I really like that the first place is worth a lot more money because throughout the season, these players have been getting money for winning points along the way. So it makes sense to make first place that much more impactful. Otherwise, they just, no one will really care, right?
Yeah, right.
But,
Yeah.
no, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna mention the format is slightly different. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that for the this playoff format. It's slightly different than the regular season.
Sure, slightly different, I would say, is an understatement. We have best of 17, last hero standing. We actually thought this was the format that was going to be played during the mid-season playoffs, but that ended up being Conquest. And it's not only last hero standing, it's last player standing. So you cannot get away, can't get off that computer unless you've lost with all of your classes. And since there are 9 classes, we have 3 players with 2 and 1 player with 3. So look for the best player or the team that they consider their best player to be piling those 3 classes as we get our next team, EDG, on the screen here. So what do you think about that format, Jay? Are you excited to be casting it? Do you think maybe it could be better, or what do you think?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's generally, just as a general rule, a lot of people in the competitive scene really, really prefer last hero standing overall, just because it allows maybe a little bit more, because you don't have to win with every single one of your decks, so it allows you to bring maybe slightly riskier decks, like 1 or 2 slightly riskier decks for your classes. So I'm kind of excited to see what these guys bring for this, for the different format, because we've kind of seen a lot of the time throughout the season, especially the last couple of weeks, teams have kind of settled into bringing one type of deck for each class, just kind of over and over, week after week. And so I'm kind of excited to see if any of these teams decide to switch it up a little bit for the new format.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different strategical aspects, especially the way this particular format is set up, like we were mentioning it to each other before we got started, is that you have to basically bring the counter to your counter as your second deck, or in some cases, your third deck in this particular format, and you can really get in trouble if you lose 2 in a row to the same class in that situation. Since we have EDG on the screen right now, let's go ahead and introduce them. We have Bing Xuan with the microphone first in the gray shirt to the left, now handing it off to Love Shabu, our 2014 BlizzCon qualifier, and to his right is Enian, who is also, along with Bing Xuan, in the top 10 of the leaderboard standings as far as win percentage is concerned. Finally, to the very right is the gregarious and some would say maybe eccentric No Tomorrow, who made, obviously, BlizzCon 2015 and has really provided a spark to his EDG team since he joined midway through the first season of HTS. So look for him to kind of provide the spark for them. But as far as win percentage is concerned, it's Enian and Bing Xuan.
Yeah, which is a little bit interesting because you would have thought that maybe, well, especially No Tomorrow, but maybe just the other two players would be kind of the two players that aren't in the top 10. You would have maybe expected to be in the top 10 if you would have talked about it before the season. So that's kind of interesting. And really, we're seeing a lot of maybe slightly lesser known players really come into their own over this team story.
Yeah, just had to get a little, whip in the butt there from No Tomorrow to get them going, realize their full potential. But yeah, Inya and Bingshun finally making things happen after being kind of middling players, throughout their Hearthstone careers. We do have obviously No Tomorrow with a microphone right now, and he's always just has a super amount of personality. I'm actually, this is not a very Casterly thing to do, but I would really like to see EDG go off against OMG because Chang and No Tomorrow are the two most like outspoken, outgoing players. I just want to see them talk trash to each other the entire time, and just it will. I mean, you see No Tomorrow. He's obviously being expressive right now, but when we see Chang, he like literally puffs out his chest when he like speaks in the microphone. I don't really know any Chinese, but you can tell he's just talking so much smack to the other team. Like, yeah, we're gonna win, easy peasy.
Well, D2, I mean, I think the real question, though, on everyone's mind is if EDG were to win today, what do you think No Tomorrow's celebration would be? Because we've already seen singing and dancing, so during the mid-season playoffs. So do you think he'd come up with anything new, or just go back to his tried and true singing and dancing antics?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go with option C and go with he doesn't do anything, and the reason why isn't because No Tomorrow doesn't want to do anything, but he doesn't want to do it just for advancing to the semifinals. He wants to win the championship and then do a nice little dance. And
Okay, that's
yeah.
true.
Anyway, we do have. Looks like we're going to an ace match interview. No, we're going to the team captain interview. I'm not really sure what's going on here. Bingshun looks like he's just talking to Snowkiss for a little bit. Have a one-on-one chat. Not really sure what's going on here, but looks like we're in for a little bit more talk zone.
Yeah, well,
We have a
it's,
question in the chat. What is the format? I just mentioned this before, so make sure you pay attention. I can say that to Mihaitzen because he's one of my viewers. But yeah, the format is best of 17, last hero standing, and it's kind of like last player standing because you cannot. If you lose, you can't get off the computer unless you lost with all your decks. So you can't replace your player with a different player midway through. And so yeah. Bingshun continuing to talk to Snowkiss. I wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So something kind of interesting. I guess they haven't shown us the exact classes that all these guys have taken, but something to be.
Oh, Bingshun won the MVP.
Oh, that's right. Because one of the precursors for the MVP was your team had to be in the top 4, right?
Not really sure. I assume that's what it was, but Bingshun actually had like the 4th best record. And
Because I know that Celestial had a couple players in the top 3, but they didn't make the top 4.
Right. And that certainly makes sense to award it to someone who made the playoffs. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's like, what, you're MVP of a team that didn't actually make it, and so it rewards your team doing well. And it looks like he was 36-24 with a 10-5 record in the ace match. Again, I think he was had the 4th best record in the league. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we don't have the leaderboard standings at the moment. But we'll talk about all that and more when we come back from this break, guys. And we'll have the first match for you in this best of 17 last hero standing marathon match coming up for you next. Welcome back, guys, to Hearthstone Team Story. This is the playoffs. I am D2. With me is Jay, and we're getting started with this awesome match between EDG and Veteran. A lot of money on the line, $5,000 for this match alone, and $45,000 total for the 4-team tournament. As for our Chinese casters, we have Snowkiss, as always. On her right is Sword from Team IG, and on the left is Dong Dong from Team OMG. And he's going to be watching very intently because the winner of this match will face off against his team, and I'm sure he's going to be playing in that match for OMG. Let's take a look at these classes. We have Bingshun on the very top left with Warrior and Hunter, followed by No Tomorrow with Paladin Shaman, Inyan with Mage and Warlock, and Love Shabu with Druid, Priest, and Rogue. He's going to be piling all 3 of those decks, so increased pressure on him. Xiaoguqi in the top right with Rogue, Mage, Xiaoyan with the Hunter, Druid, Magicwind with Paladin and Shaman, and on the bottom right there is Peggy with Priest, Warlock, and Warrior. And like we were mentioning before, Jay, this is not like the ace match team match kind of dichotomy where the ace match person, yeah, they're piloting 3 decks, but it was worth 1 point to the team matches 2. So typically it was up to the teams whether they want their best player or sometimes their worst player in the ace match. But here with the person piloting 3 decks is almost certainly going to be what teams think are their best player, I would imagine.
Yeah. So now something kind of interesting. Maybe it's related to that. Is the fact that and so we see here that the 2 times that EDG and Veteran have played, Veteran's actually taken it 2-1. So pretty close matches, actually, even with similar scores in both the team and ace match. So interesting, kind of interesting there. But something I was going to ask actually before the break was, what do you think about for both teams? Their player that has 3 classes is running Priest. So what do you think maybe the reasoning is behind that?
Well, I think that they don't want to get Priest in too much trouble. Like, Priest, the only real time that you're going to be able to counter something is when you have, like, the flexibility to do so. So I think they want the flexibility of Priest, of being able to play Priest when they want to, rather than when they need to. Because if you have 2 players, and you have Priest and X, and that X deck counters your opponent's deck the best, like, say someone just lost, and you bring that X deck to beat the other deck. Now, if that deck is beaten, Priest is just going to lose most of the time. So I think they want the flexibility of being able to use Priest when they want to, and not because they're forced to.
Okay, I see. So we do see for this first match, it looks like EDG will be putting up No Tomorrow first with Shaman and Paladin. This is kind of interesting, D2, because throughout the whole season, we've kind of seen No Tomorrow err on the side of he's been playing a lot of Hunter and Mage, if I recall correctly.
Right. Yeah, he's been playing a lot of Yogg decks, essentially. But
Yeah.
but they probably figure the thing is, like we mentioned a few times already, the strategy changes once you combine all the players rather than having a separate ace match and team match. So I think that they decided to give Lo Shabu a bit of a leash here as far as what he's able to play, being able to play the Priest and the Druid and the Rogue. And so that kind of took the Druid away from No Tomorrow, obviously. And then from there, right, it doesn't really make sense to combine Druid and Mage because they kind of counter similar things as we go back to the caster desk, apparently. So it looks like we're back up here. But yeah, there's so many reasons why they could change things up. Obviously, you'd like to have your best players bring the decks they're more comfortable with, but I think first and foremost is you need to have a deck that counters the deck that counters your first deck. And so I think they had to shuffle things around a bit, and then at the end they're like, well, okay, No Tomorrow, you're Shaman and Paladin. That's my best guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and it looks like from Veteran also is going to be Peggy playing, and he is their 3. He is their one who has the 3 classes. And so he does have that Priest, Warrior, and Warlock, it appears.
Right. And it could be something, he could just get Priest out right away. You never know, like Priest maybe just takes a win right off the bat. Maybe your opponent starts with Zoo, which would be a reasonable starting point, and that's maybe Priest's only chance to get a win. So perhaps they're going with this for Peggy, maybe just try to get Priest off right off the bat, and you don't really expect Priest to ever get a win because you kind of just have to get lucky and have it run up against, a class that is favored against. And
right.
So he could go with Priest, and then from there, if it doesn't work out, he has 2 classes remaining to be able to counter whatever Priest lost to. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Priest right off the bat right here.
Yeah, neither would I, because as sad as it is, if Priest gets 1 win in this format, you're kind of feeling really, really good. Like, that's kind of 1 more win than you were expecting Priest to get.
Right, and I'm going to address something in the chat. Apparently, whatever betting sites there was IG versus Veteran, and IG is not in the playoffs. So whatever betting site you use, I don't know if they were referring to Friday's match in which IG played, excuse me, Saturday's match in which IG played Veteran, but IG was never going to be in the playoffs in the first place. There would be one thing, if it was like World Elite and they messed up and thought that World Elite somehow made the playoffs. But whatever betting site that you bet on, they need to get their act together because IG is never playing again for the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right. And actually, something I was going to mention here is that Peggy with this Priest actually has a fairly reasonable matchup versus both pretty much any sort of Paladin and the and
Shaman.
the Shaman. I mean, less so against the Shaman, but
But it's reasonable.
still,
It's not like completely like a
yeah,
loss like Hunter, right? So
yeah.
yeah, and this is actually a really good matchup for Peggy. If he can go ahead and entomb all the death rattles from No Tomorrow, then he's gonna be in a really good spot. So yeah, like you mentioned, this is one of the better situations for veteran. And even though I would say overall, EDG has done better on the season, and I would expect them to be favorites, we saw also, like we were talking about before, when we saw those stats that, veteran beat EDG twice already, and so they kind of have their number in a way. And this could be a little bit of an upset as far as the standings are concerned.
Yeah, it could be. Now, something kind of key here is No Tomorrow. We are saying it's fairly, I would say, favored for Peggy, but what we do notice is that No Tomorrow is running Justicar in his Justicar Trueheart in this deck, which can actually really help because even if you are getting, your really powerful death rattles like Tyrion or Sylvanas or Karin entombed by the priest, No Tomorrow can still, if he gets the Justicar in the late game, can really start cranking out because 2/1/1s is surprisingly kind of difficult for Priest to deal with a lot of the time. Oh, and actually, this is going to help a lot too. Is he's also running Elise, which is not something you see every day in this N'Zoth Paladin. So some maybe little tech cards here that No Tomorrow has in his deck that will make this a slightly more reasonable matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, yeah, I was looking at Peggy being able to maybe steal this one away by virtue of being priest, but this is a really big deal, like you mentioned, because he's going to be able to just, you know, or speaking of No Tomorrow, he can just, put out those 1/1s every single turn, and Peggy really can't do anything about them. And getting it out this early is absolutely huge. Peggy, by the way, he was very, I don't know what you would call greedy or just very patient, but he didn't Soured Pain the Pyromancer on turn 2, even though No Tomorrow clearly was being very aggressive playing it out, and just saved it until this turn after he even played the Cairn. I guess he realizes that once he gets his Justicar off, he can just heal back up, and Paladin has no burst damage. So I think it's a pretty good play here from Peggy. And No Tomorrow's just gonna choose over the face here.
And this is No Tomorrow, typically known as being a very good aggro player, and this is No Tomorrow kind of going back to his roots here. And he's like, even if I'm gonna play a control deck, I'm still gonna go face.
Yeah,
So much respect.
yeah,
Much respect.
it's something that, for instance, Chalky, obviously he won DreamHack, but there was a DreamHack back, way back when he, I think it was in Shipping, where he got to the top 8, and it was because he was playing control decks, but very aggressively, and sometimes just playing those decks aggressively, like, he's just gonna go for the 1-4 lethal? This
Oh,
is
look at
insane.
this.
This is insane. He's just gonna go for the 1-4 lethal. Okay, this is No Tomorrow for you. Oh my goodness. Wow, if
Look
he
at
gets
this.
this, I swear, okay, it just kills off the,
Oh,
just kills off the
oh, that would have
control.
been too good. Just ending the game on turn 8 in the Priest versus Paladin matchup. That would have been too much.
Wow, and Peggy even gets the Darkshire Alchemist off the top there to put him back into a reasonable position. He even has the Justicar for the super heals from here on out, but No Tomorrow's hand is looking pretty devastating. So many big minions, and Peggy doesn't have that in Tomb yet.
Yeah, and he already had to use a Shadow of Death on the Ragnaros, so not really any big removal. I mean, he does have the Alchemy and Circle of Healing. Oh, and he now has the Flash Heal as well, so that'll help out a little bit, but you're still giving the Death Rattles to the eventual N'Zoth that'll come down for the Paladin. So ultimately, because if a Death Rattle gets entombed and your opponent plays it, then you can no longer get that off. But it looks like Peggy is just right back with the face strategy, and I mean, why not? He's now got, I mean, with the Alchemy Soul Priest plus the hero power. And he even has
Flash
Blood
Heal,
Mage
yeah.
Thanos. He has, what, like 10 burst damage from hand?
Yeah, 10 burst damage from hand is pretty nice. Certainly makes sense here for Peggy. So Peggy's saying, you're going to hit my face, I'm just going to erase you. This is the last matchup I would ever expect to raise from two different classes. Priest and Paladin face race.
And is this... Oh, this is so close. It's going to be
One, or
just a couple damage off.
Yeah, 2 damage off lethal here for Peggy. If he can pick up a Flash Heal, that would be lethal. And that is Shifting Shade
Oh.
instead. Maybe he can get a Forbidden Healing off the Shifting Shade.
Now,
We haven't seen a single Forbidden Healing yet, and presumably there's 2 in No Tomorrow's deck.
yeah, almost certainly. This is... What a way to start off the playoffs. This is how you start off a playoff match, D2. When there's a total of 40, when there's when you've got $5,000 or a total of $45,000 on the line, this is how you play.
Yeah,
No fear.
Yeah, just go all face there. But yeah, I mean, No Tomorrow's just kind of barely holding on. Picks up the Forbidden Healing, which is really good for him, and not for the reasons he probably thinks. He's obviously concerned about the shifting shade there. And let's see what he picks up. Picks up a Keeper of Oldemon, which is a pretty good, removal tool here for Peggy. So at least there's that. Doesn't pick up any sort of lethal, but
It's true, but no Forbidden Healing Dream, unfortunately.
yes, No Tomorrow goes up to 21 anyway, so I doubt that was going to happen. Peggy picks up his N'Zoth, and I think it's only been Karen and Shifting Shade that's been played out thus far. I'm going to go ahead and use his Excavated Evil here to clear off most of the board and be on his merry way.
Oh, that's an interesting synergy that you don't see come up all that often. The Keeper of Oldemon into Excavated Evil. All right, so Tyrion coming down, and No Tomorrow kind of playing out the Tyrion. He didn't see the Cairn didn't get entombed, so he's kind of feeling maybe like I mean an entomb could have been drawn since then, but kind of feeling like maybe Peggy doesn't have an entomb, so good time to play the Tyrion.
Yeah, absolutely. And without that entomb, what does Peggy even do here? I guess he just creates some tension with Sylvanas. And
Yeah, Sylvanas is really, really annoying to be facing down when you have Tyrion on the board.
next turn, Peggy can go for Akanai's Circle and stuff, and maybe guaranteed take the Tyrion. So this ends up working out pretty well. And Notamar can't kill off his own Tyrion unless Peggy attacks it. And then Notamar would still have to have some way to destroy his own Tyrion. So this creates a lot of tension here on this side, or on both sides, I would say. But it's a really good move by Peggy with nothing else really to do here.
Yeah, now actually deciding to get the heal just in case there's some weird outside chance where No Tomorrow can find lethal. All right, so no Pyromancer. So I was going to say, if there was a wild Pyromancer, would you almost consider killing off your own Tyrion this turn as No Tomorrow? Oh, going for the 1/6 and takes a 1/1. So.
Yeah, this is the best thing for No Tomorrow. No Tomorrow realized that Peggy kind of did this for a reason. Any sort of Excavated Evil or Akanai Circle would be pretty devastating. And by the way, the reason why Peggy did that, he healed from 17. There was 12 damage on the board for No Tomorrow. So if he had a way to hit face and or Pyromancer plus Spell plus Equality, then No Tomorrow had lethal there with the attack from everything plus the attack from the Ashbringer. So that's why Peggy played it. That's why Peggy played it very safe.
All right, so Harrison being played up tempo, and this has to be the most aggressive Priest versus Paladin game I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, they're just going back and forth, and Harrison actually a very big pickup here. We get to see an Alkanai Circle plus the Harrison for a full clear of all threats that No Tomorrow has, including and also being able to draw. And so we see Embrace the Shadow come into hand for Peggy. And that's kind of interesting because I mean we knew that something was up when we saw that Peggy did have the Blood Mage Thanos, which is a little bit unusual to see in Priest. And so we are going to see Entomb come down on the second Tyrion that comes out, almost certainly from the N'Zoth, played by No Tomorrow. It's a very fast N'Zoth by No Tomorrow, but I mean he didn't really have anything else much to do, so it makes sense.
Alright, well, we have our viewers getting very confused. Apparently they got skamazed by the gambling site. This is Veteran versus EDG. IG is never playing for the rest of the season. Guys, don't get it mixed up. We have Veteran on the bottom right and EDG on the left. I put up the text for you to make it a bit easier for you to understand. But yeah, please, no more questions. And if there are questions in chat, I hope the other chatters will be able to help you guys out.
All right, and just look at the aggression from both of these players. Peggy with the Embrace the Shadow and Flash Heal in hand, going very, very aggressive. Fortunately for No Tomorrow, he does have that he does have that Forbidden Healing in hand. But just this is maybe one of the oddest games I've seen in this entire team story. Just the way it's being played. So I think as No Tomorrow, you really want to play the Forbidden Healing here, just because you've seen so much. Kind of really weird lines of play taken by Peggy, like very aggressive. So you need to be, and also you've seen the Blood Mage Thanos, so you have to kind of smell a rat at this point. But it looks like he is going to maybe not end up healing and feel kind of safe. Well, I guess after having seen one Flash Heal, he probably feels a little bit safe.
Right, I was actually looking at chat for a moment there. Has the Cairn attacked yet? Because this could be lethal for Peggy right now. with Embrace the Shadow
Oh,
plus
oh, it
Flash
is.
Heal. It's just lethal. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so Peggy taking after a really, really crazy game here from the Priest versus Paladin, one of the fastest Priest versus Paladin games we've seen in its entire team story. Peggy is going to take game one against No Tomorrow with the Priest into the Paladin, and so Peggy will continue playing that Priest. So, like we were saying, if Priest can get a win, you're kind of feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That priest win is super huge. Even though it did only get the win versus the paladin, which most decks are capable of doing, paladin can kind of sometimes run away with certain games, especially if they get the right draw. We certainly saw Evangelion win a DreamHack recently with dominating paladin play. So again, getting one with anything with priest is obviously huge. And it's just kind of funny because I was looking away for a moment there, kind of getting some, things done, and then I look back, it's like, oh, I guess it's just lethal for for the
Yeah.
side of the priest. We are having the shaman come up next here. The aggro shaman, which I would say is a pretty reasonable favorite against the priest. People obviously
Really.
there's the healing from the priest side, but typically the answers don't come exactly how you want them to, and the aggro shaman's able to get in that damage. Looks like we have a bit of freeze, unfortunately. Gonna go ahead and just see if we go to a lower quality, just so we can get that on the screen there.
I would actually argue maybe that the shaman is a little bit of an underdog against the priest, just because, like you were saying, there's a lot of healing, but also you've got really big board clears, and even aggro. I mean, aggro shaman to a lesser extent than mid range shaman, but really sometimes can rely on building up a decent board. And priest, I mean, depending on their draws, just sometimes just doesn't let you do that. I mean, at the same time, though, that having been said, the priest, I mean, priest can is kind of one of those decks that can lose to anything, and shaman's one of those decks that can win against anything. So, and especially with an opening like this, No Tomorrow's looking pretty good. He's carrying out pretty well. He's got a lot of damage. He's even got the ancestral knowledge for refilling the hand after a little bit. I think that he's going to end up playing the ancestral knowledge just to buff up this tunnel trog a little bit. Yeah, he's considering it. And we may see the abusive come down as well, just to push a little bit of extra damage. Oh, no, we're actually going to see this Earth Shock to
Yeah,
just deny a little bit of card draw for Peggy.
not a whole lot else you really want to Earthshock in the deck from Peggy here. Something like Shifting Shade, you don't really care if your opponent gets burst because it doesn't really matter. It's not like they can race you. But anyway, to go back to the debate that we're having a moment ago, you know what really turns the tide for me as far as which class is going to win is that Doomhammer does 16 damage and Flash Heal only does 5, and there you go.
Okay, well,
So,
it's hard to argue with those numbers. 16 is indeed fairly larger than 5.
just by a little
But
bit.
yeah, but so what we don't see any Doomhammer in hand for No Tomorrow, but we do actually see quite a bit of other damage.
Yeah.
So looks
By
like
the
he
way,
may.
By the way,
Oh, sorry.
it seemed weird. Sorry to cut you off there. It seemed weird last turn, just to revisit the last turn there from No Tomorrow. He could have obviously just flooded the board really, really hard, but he went for kind of the medium play, which is that he went for the ancestral knowledge just to get more damage on the board without committing too much to Akanai Circle. We were getting right in that turn for Akanai Circle, so it certainly made sense there for him to just hold back. Peggy picks up a Lava Burst, which is actually reasonable if he wants to take out something like this Tunnel Truck right now, but instead just going to play a little bit greedy and go for the Museum Curator and maybe get some burst again off a second Shifting Shade.
Right, and choosing not to play the Flash Heal because he's even with 5 damage on board, he's making a pretty reasonable call. I'd say that the Shaman can't deal an additional 16 damage off 4 mana. But we do see that Doomhammer coming into hand for No Tomorrow, so does represent quite a bit of damage. And yeah, No Tomorrow just choosing to put down this Argent Horse Rider and start hitting face. How can I Soul Priest? I don't know if we're going to see that played anytime soon because it
Oh,
would really limit Peggy's healing
well,
ability. And
he's doing it
yeah,
now. He's gonna make sure to heal first. He just needs to
oh,
get
okay,
rid of
here we
this
go.
board, right? And there's no real way to get rid of the board. Doesn't have a Cabal, doesn't have a Pain, and so there's no way to deal with those 2/1s there, which represent obviously 4 damage every single turn. And so I do like this from Peggy, just healing as much as possible and then putting that guy on the board. I think No Tomorrow might not even hero power here. Just
Yeah, I
so
was gonna say having seen the Flash Heal, I don't see any reason for
yeah.
No Tomorrow to really play anything. And we are gonna see the Ancestral Knowledge. So big, he's gonna be over. No Tomorrow's gonna be overloaded for 4 next turn, but he's got the Doomhammer out, which is really
If you're Peggy, you just double down and put your second Akanai on the board. That would be actually really funny. But
that
yeah,
would be an interesting
tomorrow,
line of play.
no tomorrow basically is saying I can just beat you with burst, and if you can't heal, you don't have any flash heal, you can't really race me. And oh, okay, Peggy's
Oh,
just gonna go ahead and kill off his own Akanai here, so that he can heal from here on out, and has the Justicar for those super heals. So this certainly makes a lot of sense from Peggy, but it does allow no tomorrow to just flood the board again.
yeah, and after having seen already one Alchemy Circle combo, No Tomorrow feeling reasonably confident that at least some of this will stick past trades, and yeah, Doomhammer just continuing to whack away at face, as Doomhammer typically does, and yeah, just not too much for Peggy to do right now, just he has to heal up and clear what he can,
Not too
and
bad though.
actually,
Yeah,
yeah,
not
that wasn't a bad turn. I forgot he had the Lava Burst in hand that he got off the Shifting Shade, but still leaving a minion on board, so leaving something for Abusive Sergeant to buff.
Yeah, absolutely. And double lava burst. How much damage is that?
That
So,
is 18. So yeah, No Tomorrow is just gonna take this one right here.
all right, there you go. Doomhammer, better than Flash Heal confirmed. Sorry, I'm just gonna have to rub that in for a second. But all right, so we have
That's
Do Tomorrow being able to take that win, which I would say that Veteran and Peggy don't really feel too bad about since they already got their win with the Priest, and that's really more than you can ask for.
yeah. All right. So that's pretty good. The good news for EDG is they did manage to pull a game back, but the bad news for EDG is that Peggy does have the Warlock available. So assuming that that is the Zoo, that's a pretty bad matchup for the Shaman. Well, it's been, I say that, but it's actually been becoming a little bit more reasonable recently. Some people are even going so far as to call it a 50-50 matchup.
I think that they're referring to the mid-range variant,
Well,
because the mid-range variant has
a lot
double
of
storm a lot of the time.
referring to the Agrish. Oh, okay. Well, they might have also been referring to the hybrid shaman as well, but I don't know. In my own personal experience, I've kind of found it to be not as bad of a matchup as a lot of people say. It's still not a great matchup, but there are definitely ways that the shaman can win.
The issue is but he does run Lightning Storm, which is a tech that's been put into Shaman recently. Going with the Flame Imp is actually very risky here for Peggy because Lightning Bolt and Rockbiter take it out, whereas nothing really takes out the Possessed Villager. But he wants to be able to contest something like this Tunnel Trog, and he doesn't have Abusive in hand, or Direwolf Alpha for that matter. So Peggy getting a little bit punished here. And the fact that No Tomorrow already has that Lightning Storm, the tech that people have been putting in Aggro Shaman lately, is kind of a big deal. I'm just going to go for the Soulfire right away. Needs that tempo.
Oh yeah, but getting rid of the Knife Juggler, which can be so impactful, especially in this matchup, but just in the Zoo deck in general. And we do see the Totem Golem coming into hand here for No Tomorrow. Could be very good in an upcoming turn. Is just forced to tap, drawing into Doomguard.
Yeah,
This
is the way that Aggro Shaman wins, right? Either they get a really good hand, or the Zoo just gets a Nightmare hand, and this certainly qualifies as a Nightmare hand here from Peggy.
Yeah, it's not looking too good, although he is going to be able to come back a little bit with the help of this Power Overwhelming on the Possessed Villager. So not looking terrible. And something to note about these players in this game, but even in the last game, they're both just playing so quickly and playing very confidently, making kind of snap decisions, which I think do you think they might be trying to maybe throw a little bit of an intimidation factor out there?
That could be
Just like,
that could be something that they're thinking about, but I think more so it's just that they know what they're doing in these situations. Like, all of these decisions have been pretty straightforward for both players. I would say you need to kill X minion, you need to deal out the board, etc. I would say that Peggy is playing a little bit too quickly for my taste, because the very last match that we saw from Peggy, he actually made a pretty big mistake to be able to lose against IG. So for Peggy's sake, I would actually like him to slow down a bit, but so far he hasn't really made any mistakes, so I can't complain too much.
yeah, but No Tomorrow really getting very firmly ahead on board, and but that's actually a pretty big pickup. The Crazed Alchemist can switch around the attack and help with this Flame Tongue Totem to kill it, and good pickup there as well with the Dark Peddler.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was just going to play out the Doomguard, because obviously that's a bigger threat.
Yeah.
But if you can pick up a 2-drop right off the top there for Peggy, then I suppose you go for it. And to be fair, his opening hand was Power Overwhelming plus Soulfire plus 5-drop plus 4-drop. So the rest of his deck is basically 1 and 2-drop. So not too big of a risk there for Peggy.
Yeah, all right. If Peggy can pick, oh wow, No Tomorrow just choosing to go very aggressively here.
Peggy only has...
Yeah, I like it as well. He has the Lightning Storm in hand, so he feels reasonably confident. Oh, that's probably the worst draw on the deck right now for Peggy.
Right, it's certainly pretty painful here. Though, you could argue that maybe he wants Defender of Argus a little bit more in the near future, so hope maybe he can pick that up if you are Peggy, or maybe even a Voidwalker, which would be very annoying for No Tomorrow as well. So, alright, let's see if he does get the Wrath of Air. Doesn't get the Wrath of Air, let's see if he can roll high on the Void Walker, and he's already attacking face, so I assume so. And yeah, he gets all threes! Sometimes lucky if you're No Tomorrow, and Peggy looks increasingly more uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, and so assuming that no taunt. Oh well, say that.
Oh,
but
double taunt!
oh man, that's all right. So no tomorrow's gonna have to do it with spells, pretty much from this point moving forward.
Well,
Although no, he does have the Earth Shock to get
right.
to one of these taunts,
and he can just Lava Burst the other one. Yeah, I assume you just Lava Burst the Doomguard just to get the damage off the field, because you're Lava Bursting one of these. I suppose you could Earthshock one and Face Tank both on the Voidwalker, but that doesn't really make too much sense here, especially because you're not getting extra damage to face. So this looks like a Lava Burst to the Doomguard, and then...
Oh, he's going for the 25% chance, or the 33% chance lethal, but doesn't get it.
Yeah, but now he can't actually Lava Shock very... Well, I guess he just Lava Shocks right now. He has to Lava Shock first. I would imagine you just go face.
Yeah, probably. Oh, he's choosing to use this.
I can't really say I like this play too much, to be honest. I guess...
I don't know how much I mind it, because you're probably not going to die in the upcoming turn.
He's putting his opponent down to 1. Okay, he's putting his opponent down to 1 so that he can't tap, and he can't possibly die here. Okay, this is fine. And there's no taunts left in the deck for Peggy. Alright, so this is perfectly fine. Okay, sure.
So it's looking like No Tomorrow is near guaranteed a win here, unless something...
Oh,
well, he could have Voidwalker come off this.
Could be a taunt right here. That is not a taunt.
No taunt.
And there's no taunts in this deck, so there's no reason to take Mortal Coil, I would imagine. And there's not enough damage to kill, so... Alright. Gonna go for Mortal Coil, but I don't think there's anything in the deck that does not do enough damage. And No Tomorrow's going to tank this one in a pretty unfavored matchup.
And that is probably Shaman's worst matchup outside of maybe Cthulhu Warrior in the current meta. So that's actually maybe a little bit of bad news for Veteran. I mean, we could see this Shaman from No Tomorrow do a lot of work and maybe take out a lot of classes here.
By the way, I want to go back to that last play that I was initially saying I don't like, but now it seems really good. Thinking outside the box there for No Tomorrow, I was thinking about the most obvious play. You get a lot of damage to face, you clear the board, but you essentially have 2-turn lethal, and your opponent could maybe draw 2 things to win them the game. Whereas No Tomorrow, he went for, you can't possibly win the game, and you only have 1 card, so I just win every single time. So I just want to go back and say, even though I said I don't like the play at first, like I really like it now, having, going over it the second time.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like Peggy is breaking out his final deck, what appears to be an OTK Worgen deck. We did see what is it? The one that makes it so your Commanding Shout. We did see a Commanding Shout, which is indicative of the New Age OTK Worgen deck that just draws so many cards. It's probably one of the fastest drawing decks I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, the amount it cycles is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, it draws through its deck before the other player has gone through like 10 cards. It's pretty nuts. And yeah, here for Peggy, he has kind of an awkward turn. He might just double butt to Icar, but yeah, probably going to save the second butt to Icar. Just wants to get the 2/2 out there. And this deck is actually pretty good against aggro decks as well, because you're able to use those whirlwind effects, the massive amounts of whirlwind effects, to just clear off your opponent's board over and over again. No Tomorrow, obviously, as the aggro shaman, can just kill from face rather than actually having a board in the first place. But you want to get that chip damage in, certainly.
Yeah, an OTK Warrior kind of breaks the mold of combo decks being bad against aggro, particularly aggro shaman, just because aggro shaman is a little bit dependent on building a board more so than maybe the face hunters of old. And so you can see like big plays sometimes with the big turns where you just clear off with the Wild Pyromancer plus Commanding Shout, where you just play like a million spells and can clear off the entire opposing board. So it can get pretty goofy. We'll see where this goes.
The face juggler always goes face. And No
always
Tomorrow,
goes face.
Now he's considering whether to use his Rock Biter, but with the Doomhammer in hand, obviously you can tell he's reluctant to do so. Peggy just not even going to play the Commanding Shout. I would have just liked to see him, cycle through his deck, but I suppose he can use it next turn. This Doomhammer could be clearing the board, even though it seems bad. It just prevents Peggy from really doing anything crazy with this Crazy Alchemist. Or it's not Crazy Alchemist, with the Wild Pyromancer.
Yeah, you really can't let the Wild Pyromancer stay up, especially in this deck. It just because it can get so ugly so fast, and he curves out pretty neatly into the Flaming Faceless next turn. Now, something kind of interesting, we do see a couple of combo pieces being assembled for Peggy. Like, this is one where you really just try to draw through your deck as quickly as possible and get to that combo. But sometimes, if you get an Emperor Thorson and like some combo pieces early, sometimes this deck is capable of just cheesing out a win on turn like 6 or 7, just purely based on the fact that they can get all their combo pieces together. And we may actually see that we're one charge away from having a pretty reasonable combo here. And so, yeah, we are going to see this execute on the Flaming Faceless, which is pretty bad news for No Tomorrow. Plus, seeing that shield block kind of hurts.
Yeah, shield block is one of those cards that it's really funny that to see that in such a combo deck, but it makes sense. They need to survive for a bit longer, but it really works out against aggressive decks here because you have that extra time to be able to set up your combo and prevent lethal for your opponent.
Yeah, but actually, this isn't a fantastic hand for Peggy unless he can pick up something to activate this Acolyte of Pain. He's really looking at a couple of fairly dead turns because this is where you sometimes get stuck with just all the combo pieces at once and not enough mana to play it out, or well, in this case, he doesn't have any charge or Emperor Thorson to get it going. And we do see actually the second Doomhammer, which in what looks like it's going to be a slightly more drawn out game, is a pretty good news for No Tomorrow.
Well, it could be drawn out, but Peggy, after putting down double Acolyte here, he could draw a ton of cards to be able to enable him for victory. If Peggy picks up Charge and Thorson, he wins the game, by the way. Just throwing that out there. And
yeah, that is very true.
He's going to just basically clear off as much as he can, put really annoying pressure on the board. And having seen already Ravaging Ghoul and Pyromancer come out, it's kind of hard to deal with these Argent Horse Riders.
Yeah, and this is... Maybe we saw the Paladin, maybe a little bit of shaky play from No Tomorrow because he's not he's considered to be much more. I mean, we've seen him play some very solid. We've seen some very solid mid-range deck play from. Oh, and gonna use this. Oh, okay. Very smartly recognizing that he doesn't need this Faceless for the combo. He will be able to deal enough damage.
Yeah, if he ever has charge, he has lethal anyway. The Worgen would go up to 6 and then 12. So yeah, if he just gets a couple more damage, Peggy just has lethal with a single Worgen.
Yeah, and I think it's very important here for No Tomorrow to play out the second Doomhammer just to really start cranking out the damage, especially with the Lava Burst in hand. He can be looking at setting up 2-turn lethal pretty easily here.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is if he thinks he's going to die, because that was a very aggressive move by Peggy here.
That's true. That is a very big consideration. Like, am I going to die? That's something you do want to be asking yourself.
If Peggy if Peggy basically has Worgen, actually, if he just has charge, Peggy has lethal from 16. So yeah, if No Tomorrow goes for the totem first, thinking he needs the taunt, and I guess he realizes that Doomhammer over a couple turns is 8, but the Flaming Thesis is just 7 by itself, and I think No Tomorrow might go face here because he's just dead to any sort of combo anyway.
Yeah, so we're going to see Peggy kind of left on the charge top deck, needing a charge top deck, because that is going to be 9/10 from hand, depending on if he decides to kill this.
Oh, but picks up the execute. Man. Other than charge, that's the best card he could possibly get. Even as the Yogg in the deck, I suppose that's just a comeback mechanic if he ever sees himself fall behind, but... Okay, alright, well, we've dealt with the Flaming Faceless. No Tomorrow has 9 damage in the hand, but... Can he get that victory anytime soon? That's a pretty good pickup for his sake. And let's see if he can roll that Taunt Totem, that all-important Taunt Totem.
Yeah, oh, can he do it? No. Well, right now, No Tomorrow is just hoping and praying that that Peggy doesn't top deck into that charge. That's really what he's hoping. Although if we don't see a charge, we may see this Yogg come out to kind of do stuff.
I would say it's pretty straightforward. You just go for the Yogg right away. Deadly Shot right on the Trog, right in the middle. Blessed Champion, doesn't really matter if it goes on the opponent. Gets a Huffer, which can attack apparently. And looks like we're having a bit of stream lag at the worst possible time. Oh, guess power Called Wild upgrade. Okay, that's your OTK right there. Who needs charge when you have this combo? And even gets Blessing of Wisdom. And yeah,
Oh,
that's
and
just
that's
gonna be
just
lethal. Oh my god.
well,
Peggy just
praise
wins the
Yawk
game.
is all, and No Tomorrow looking pretty not too happy with the outcome of that game.
That was ridiculous. Who needs charge when you can just Yago TK lethal?
Yeah, all right. So with that, we do see No Tomorrow losing with both of his classes. So coming up, what do you think that EDG will play in to kind of beat this OTK Warrior? Typically, one of the big counters to OTK Warrior is just Ice Block as a card. So if we're seeing a slightly more control, well, we've been seeing a lot of Tempo Mage, and the Chinese version of Tempo Mage tends to have at least one copy of Ice Block in it. So we may just see Mage come out here and a full mulligan for Ice Block. I wouldn't be too surprised.
I think that the OTK Worgen deck is very good against very aggressive decks that have lots of low health minions that you can just kind of whirl out, and it's favored against the direct opposite of that, which is very heavy control decks, which just give you a lot of time to set up your combo. And in the middle is where it's weak, is where you have those tempo decks, things like just very beefy mid-range creatures that are hard to take out because you only have 2 executes in the deck. And so I would imagine that we see either Druid or Tempo Dragon Warrior. Just something,
Oh, that's true.
just like mid-range minions that are very hard to deal with if you are the OTK Warrior.
Well, traditionally, yeah, that tends to be one of the kind of the bane of any sort of OTK combo deck. Like we used to see the mid-range Druid back in the day was very good against the Miracle Rogue because they were able to just build up a board and not really let go. And yeah, so I would agree there. Just one of the I got this because it's always so satisfying just like to play out that Ice Block and just know like, okay, you can launch your Worgen, deal like 30 however many like 50 damage to me in one turn, but can't get through this Ice Block, and that's your exact 1-win condition in your entire deck. So it feels pretty satisfying.
One saving grace here for EDG, and it's something that, I mean, obviously we said at the time that the Shaman win versus the Zoo was very important, but it's actually even more important than I think we initially mentioned because EDG now doesn't have to worry about the Zoo when they pick their classes. It's very much easier. You just, okay, we beat the Warrior. They can pick whatever they want afterwards, so there's no use in trying to counter whatever comes up next with our second deck, right? Or a third deck if it is Love Jabu. But they basically just come out with whatever beats the Warrior. They don't even have to worry about the Warlock. It's really bad if your opponent has 2 decks and you have to worry about countering both decks with your 2 decks.
Yeah, that is very true. All right, so is this going to be...
Bing Shuan
Yeah,
looks
look, yeah, it looks like Bing Xuan is going to come up to the plate. He is playing, it looks like Hunter and Warrior. So I think you're right. We may be just seeing this. We might just be seeing a Tempo Dragon Warrior.
It could be either, actually. Hunter's really annoying as well. If you just have those, high main you can't deal with. Stranglethorn Tiger you can't deal with. A lot of mid-range beefy minions. You can't deal with Call of the Wild either. And yeah, you can just get tempoed out by the Hunter. I wouldn't be surprised to see either right here.
Yeah, it looks like we're maybe a little bit frozen here on the stream. A little bit of quality issues. But so ultimately, I think EDG is probably favored, although you never know. The OTK Warrior, very, very strong deck right now. A lot of people consider it to be the best. A lot of people are calling it the new Brokeback, the new kind of combo Druid. It's one of the best decks to ladder with at the very least, so we'll see how it holds up. And this is another decent counter to the Warrior.
Just get out of the range of the combo. We saw the OTK Warrior, the OTK Worgen Warrior defeat Control Warrior, but it was a really unusual situation in which Lojabu, Sao Kuchi, actually, he just had to YOLO it at the end, and he only had 52 damage, only 52 damage, when his opponent has 60 health, and he just had to go for it and hope his opponent didn't have any answers, and unfortunately unfortunately for his opponent, I would say, he only had Brawl as an answer, and the Brawl did not kill both of the Worgens, and then the Worgen was able to survive and just to deliver the lethal damage. But typically, the health ends up being so ridiculously high that you can't even get there. The maximum damage that you can do from the Worgen OTK Warrior is 60, which seems like a lot, but you can actually get to 60 pretty easily if there's no pressure, if there's no minion pressure on the board from the OTK Warrior.
Yeah, and especially as we do see the Justicar in hand for No Tomorrow, or not No Tomorrow anymore. I was reading the name there for Bing Xuan. So very
Oh,
important.
sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I confused myself. But yeah, so yeah, and we already do see as well the two Cthulhu buffing cards in hand. So Cthulhu will get up to that all-important 10 attack to activate Ancient Shield Bearer, which I think we will very likely see Brand save to be used in combo with either Twin Emperor or
Yeah.
the Ancient Shield Bearer. It's
Yeah.
very, very good in this matchup with both.
Yeah, either one of those are pretty ridiculous, and Bingshan even has the Justicar, which puts so much pressure on Peggy to get something done very quickly.
Yep, and so yeah, not too exciting of anything right now for Peggy. He's kind of, we notice he's armoring up more. He's kind of given up on ever really activating his face unless for use with the Battle Rage, unless Bing Xuan plays out a reasonably sized threat. Well, like this. So I guess actually that's pretty smart by Peggy because he recognizes that almost anything and almost anything Bing Xuan plays is going to have 4 or more attack. So yeah, all right. So we are just going to see the Pyro played here for maybe a little bit of tempo, but that all-important upgraded hero power, the tank up for the warrior is up, so I would be very surprised if we didn't see Bing Xuan making an effort to push on that hero power every single turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peggy just making sure to get minions on the board. Like I mentioned, it's hard to cycle as hard as you can for that 60 damage because, as slow as the Cthulhu Warrior deck is, it can just kill you if you get enough big minions on the board. And so that's why Peggy is just trying to get some sort of damage on the board so he won't have to do 60. And maybe he can do it with just 50 or something like that. And yeah, just going to be able to cycle a bit through his deck, though it's not anything ridiculous that we've seen in the past. The other thing to keep in mind is that Peggy really doesn't want to use this Cruel Taskmaster if he doesn't have to, because that's actually part of the 60 damage combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. All right, so the Ravaging Ghoul coming in hand could do something. I mean, in a perfect world, you'd like to have the luxury to play out the Acolyte of Pain and Ravaging Ghoul, but the sad reality is that you really need to be pushing this tank up every turn, but it looks like he's going to pull the trigger on it anyway. And
Yeah,
I wouldn't hate seeing an execute here or a shield slam on this.
I do really
Ravaging
like
Ghoul,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, some people can get into the trap of just making sure I have to tank up every single turn. But if you lose tempo, then that can be very problematic if you do that, right? And on top of that, if you lose having cards in your hand, if you miss out on having extra cards in your hand because you went for that particular play, then all of a sudden you don't have the answers, and that's basically how you lose the game. If it's really hard for your opponent to actually have that 60 damage combo, and typically they have to YOLO it at some point. And if you don't have the answer to those Morgans, then you just die, which obviously is problematic.
Yeah, yeah, dying is definitely makes winning the game a lot harder. But so we do see this Twin Emperor come into hand. I think though that we're still going to see this Brand save to be used with Ancient Shield Bearer. I mean, because setting up 3 taunts is good, is really good, but because the OTK Warrior pretty much doesn't run Brawl. Oh, we are going to see the damage somewhat significantly reduced here by putting out this Cruel Taskmaster. We see a lot of the combo actually in hand right now for Peggy.
I forgot about the Yogg. The Yogg could actually be a difference maker.
That's true.
If
I'm
Yogg,
kind of curious though as to what Peggy dropped for Yogg.
probably some sort of cycle, I would imagine. It's not too hard to drop some sort of redundant card. But yeah,
That's true.
you were mentioning the Cruel Task. The Cruel Task is actually worth 8 damage if you get it off, because you buff the Worgen, which attacks twice, and that's Faceless, which attacks twice. So yeah, having to use it right now is obviously problematic, and Bington's actually just going to go for the Tomb Emperor right now, which certainly makes sense. Just going to get that tempo out there. If you wait too long and you try to go for the super play, it doesn't really help you out too much, and he still has the Brand plus Shield Bearer in hand.
Yeah, that's very, very strong. So not a ton of spells have been played yet for Peggy, so this Yogg wouldn't do too much. We do see Charge come into hand. He is considering playing this. Yeah, he is going to end up pulling the trigger on this Emperor Thorison just to get, because he's got a lot of the important things reduced. Although now, oh yeah, because even when he draws the Rampage, he'll still, since it's 2 mana, so he has the Worgen's 2, plus the 2 for the charge is 4, plus the 4 from the Faceless is 8, plus the 2 from the Rampage is another 2. So that will be a total of 10 mana, so he is good to go on that front.
Yeah, the only thing that he would have maybe considered was the Cool Taskmaster, which he's already used. So Peggy, he's got the remaining combo pieces in his deck. He has already assembled essentially, as far as being the cheap options, I would say.
Yeah, he just needs a Rampage and then that second Inner Rage for the maximum damage.
So Bing Chun here is wondering if he can die right now, because his Twin Emperor Vehicle is already damaged, which means that it will die to a 0-mana execute potentially, which Peggy does actually have in hand. So Bing Chun is wondering how he dies here, and he's actually just going to give up the Bran and the Shield Bearer, because he could just die if he goes up 20, and well, I guess he wouldn't die, but he wants to get rid of this Emperor as quickly as possible, just because it could cause some problems. And Peggy's just going to go for the Yogg right now. No one's dead, at least, so there's that.
Yeah, that is a reasonable. So,
ooh, that's really good. Now Peggy actually has minion pressure from here on out with those Nerubians in the deck.
Christopher Fun is annoying. Oh, the best possible target, pretty much. Oh, wow.
Never mind, just everything's dead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, doesn't matter as much. Land hands, where will it go? Oh, well, I guess it didn't really matter. Well, it kind of did, because if it had gone on the...
Yeah, it matters a little bit. He's going to overdraw now, though, and picks up Bolster, which is horrible. He'd almost certainly rather have a random card in his deck than Bolster. So that. Well,
it doesn't matter that he overdraws, because he now has the full combo in hand, so unless Bing Xuan can get up to above 52, then he's just dead.
He could have had maybe like a Ravaging Ghoul or something, just to have a minion. I think that, I don't, like, Bolster is completely useless. So I imagine, like, no matter what card it is, I think that he'd rather have that card.
Yeah, and is Bing Xuan just going to be dead here? He is at 49 health right now. If he were to bash face, he would be at 52, which I think is exactly how much damage Peggy can do.
Yeah, you're right. He's just dead.
Bing Xuan may just be dead.
Huh.
Well, look at that.
All right, let's just recheck the math here. So Worgen goes to 4 when it's Inner Rage. Oh, we have a freeze, by the way. My apologies. Oh god, this is a bad time for that.
Yeah, so...
Oh, sorry about that. I guess he does have lethal. He was actually 3 over. Because there's no bash, yeah. Alright, well, Bing Chun actually did the correct math there. He said, okay, I'm dead to 13 times 4 anyway, so there's no reason to actually bash here. I might as well use it for removal if I need to do it. But yeah, Peggy's actually able to pick up the win there. And that's really important because EDG had 7 decks to choose from, and they chose Control Cthulhu Warrior, and they lost. So that's obviously problematic.
Yeah, that is problematic. And yeah, Peggy still standing strong, getting some wins. He's now gotten 3 wins, which is really what you can expect from him with 3 decks. So you kind of hope the averages out 1 win per deck. So Peggy still kind of done his job now. So any wins further than this is just kind of icing on the cake, you kind of feel like.
By the way, we could go back in that game and maybe think that not playing Bran Ancient Shieldbearer that turn was the turning point, because he missed an opportunity to get a lot of armor. He missed out on he missed out on 6 armor essentially, because he could have tanked up instead, or he did tank up instead, I should say. And by doing that, he wasn't able to get that extra armor, and he was a bit afraid of dying that turn, and it seemed like it was kind of impossible even with the 0-mana execute, since you had to commit 1 attack to the Vecna. But yeah.
Alright, so we do see this Blood Acre being used for no value from Peggy, and that's probably a good idea. He just wants to keep all minions off the board. Although this is a fantastic looking curve for Bing Xuan. He's going to have the Animal Companion into Infested Wolf, into Stranglethorn Tiger. And assuming this isn't Huffer, Bing Xuan is looking pretty far ahead on board.
Huffer's actually not too bad, because Peggy had the Slam anyway.
Oh, that is true. Alright, so yeah, Huffer is coming out, but still going to get a reasonable trade. Although he may just use the Slam. Yeah. No, he wants to use it for cycle.
Yeah, I think Peggy actually wanted to use the Slam there, so he's a bit sad to take the 4 damage to the face right off the bat. And yeah, it's going to be probably the Infested Wolf here. Even though it kind of dies to the board, you still most likely keep the Spiders, though in this case we can see that he won't.
Yeah, and yeah, we do see Bing Xuan actually giving a little bit of pause for thought, thinking about using this kill command on the Wild Pyromancers, because that Wild Pyromancer, like we were talking about, can do so much damage in combination with all the spells, plus Commanding Shout. can let him use an theoretically infinite number of spells to activate it.
I suppose, so Bing Chun, what does he worry about then? He's worried about Slam plus Commanding Shout, because that was really the only way that Peggy clears the board without killing his own Pyromancer off.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very, very, very specific. It's not like you keep Slam and Commanding Shout in your opening hand.
Yeah, but Peggy is drawn a couple extra cards. Yeah, I mean, it's not completely beyond the bounds of reality. We'll see, though. I think that probably Infested Wolf is most of the time the best play. I mean, we see that it's going to get cleared in a couple of different ways.
Right,
but
you're forcing your opponent to use the clear, so there's that as well.
That is true. And he does have Stranglethorn Tiger coming up in the next turn, which is pretty good.
Pretty good indeed.
All right. So thinking about what play he wants to make here, just going to go with the Slam, see if he could draw into Commanding Shout, that would be pretty good.
Well, he could have gone for Acolyte plus Coin Slam. Well, I guess he couldn't slam for the card there, so you're kind of giving up one card to draw a card a different way. But this is fine as well. Just go for the Ravaging Ghoul. You can draw cards later. There's so many ways to draw cards. And in fact, you could go for like Acolyte, slam your own Acolyte, and Battle Rage at some point. So yeah, you don't really need to just go for you don't need to go out of your way to draw cards right now.
Good old Tiger coming out. And Tiger is one of those cards that wasn't in a lot of the original versions of Mid-Range Hunter we saw with the introduction of Standard, but has really been coming into its own recently just because one of the big reasons is because against Warrior it's good. I mean, against Warrior, against like more control Warrior, the Hunter's always good, but especially against things like Rogue, it's very good because it can't get sapped like High Main, and it's like a near guaranteed 5 damage. But we do see that High Main in hand right now for Bing Xuan, and pretty reasonable in this matchup just because it can't get sapped. Turns out Warrior does not have sap, fun fact for all you who might have been wondering about that out there. But High Main, I think, would be a reasonable play here.
I think Bing Xuan is just wondering whether he wants to kill the Acolyte or not, and looks like he's going to go for this play instead. He could actually commit. Okay, he's going to commit to the Deadly Shot because one of the things with dealing with this OTK Warrior is that if you cut off the first sign of card draw, or the first, source of card draw, it can really limit the amount of card draw from there on out because you really just chain the card draw together. But in this situation, it's kind of a bit too cute for my taste, and Bing Xuan just giving Peggy more time. If you put out that High Main earlier, then it's much harder for Peggy to deal with. Though he did have a reasonable way to deal with it on board, but now here comes the High Main.
Yep, and we'll be curving into Call of the Wild next turn, which is pretty strong. Oh, we're gonna use the Faceless on the High Main just to get a really strong mid-range minion. But we are going to see good old Call of the Wild come down, and it looks like, we're just going to see Bing Xuan considering whether or not to go full face. He is going to use the Huffer to trade into the Wild Pyromancer pretty smartly because that's one of the ways that we can see Peggy clearing. And Peggy actually going down to 18, and Bing Xuan does have that kill command in hand, so could get kind of ugly kind of fast.
All right, it's going to go for the double Battle Rage here by doing this. The funny thing is that Bing Xuan doesn't realize that Peggy didn't have the Commanding Shout in hand. That's a huge punish there if Bing Xuan doesn't kill off that Pyromancer if there's Commanding Shout. But without having Commanding Shout, Peggy actually wanted his Pyromancer to die because it was just a liability right now. He would have started, damaging his own minions, and that's obviously not where you want to be. Unless you use the Battle Rage, obviously. But he would have to do that before attacking it anyway, and then the Hover would still be alive.
All right, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, plus 5. So currently 16, 18 damage, it looks like, unless a Huffer is rolled, in which case it would be more. But I don't think there's any way that we can see lethal here. Misha, good option here, plays, makes it so the combo doesn't. Well, although we haven't seen Emperor Thorson yet, so a combo would be a little bit harder to come by.
There is Yogg, though, so you might be a bit worried about
that. There's always Yogg.
Well, not always. Well, usually there's not Yogg in this deck, but Peggy has decided to put it in, which has been very, very useful. Both games, one game it just won him the game outright, and then the other game, it was pretty significant in giving him the win as well. So, What are we going to put this Houndmaster on? It's going to go on the Leok. He was just deciding between the Hyman and the Leok. Just going to push a lot of damage to face. And here's where Yogg really needs to get some work done. Unless
Yes, Yogg is very important here. Yeah, coin into the Yogg. I think you keep the inner rage if you're Peggy, because you need that to actually win the game.
Well,
no.
he's so far behind. I actually don't mind this at all, yeah. I don't really mind this because he needs an extra spell, and he also can start clearing off the board. So he's in a situation where he doesn't need to clear off as much stuff from his opponent's side, because there's not that many spells, if I remember correctly.
All right, well, praise Yogg. Peggy is praising Yogg pretty hard here. Needs a board clear. Needs something like a Blizzard or a Flame Strike wouldn't quite do it. Kill Command could do something. Is going to do it on his own.
That was very bad. It was really bad. I think he's just dead, no matter what.
Yeah, that was a pretty poor Yogg. Yeah, I think that
unless it's Ice Block, Vaporize, or Ice Barrier, which we know it's not. But from Bing Chun's point of view, it has to be that plus the Noble Sacrifice, or else he's dead. And now he's just dead to Kill Command.
Yeah, although I think in the case that it was Ice Block, I think Kill Command is the... Well, actually, no, this develops minions, and it deals 5 damage, so it's still good. But it is not that. So Bing Chun is going to pull back a win, and so now we see EDG tying it up 3-3. And Peggy will be eliminated from the match after. But like I said, he got his 3 wins, so he's probably feeling okay about that.
Yeah, I'm actually curious when we're going to take a break, speaking of the production side of things. But we could take it now, I'm not sure. We didn't take one after 5 games, which made sense because we're in the middle of a battle between Bing Chun and Peggy. But I guess we'll find out soon enough. We'll just kind of take the cues from the Chinese casters. And looks like they're continuing to check on veterans. So we might just have one break today and then just go 9 games and 8 games or something like that. But
it's a marathon. I'm excited, DT. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So the good thing for Bing Chun is that he brought 2 decks that can actually beat the OTK Worgen Warrior, right? Because if we went with something like Lo Shobu, he goes with the Druid, maybe it doesn't work, and then from there you're stuck with like Priest and Rogue, which is like not quite as good. So yeah, that was the reason why they went with Bing Chun. Obviously, it's unfortunate to have your Cthulhu Warrior get taken out, which is a pretty strong deck in its own right. But you know, they avoided the worst case scenario, which is your counter deck gets beaten, and then the deck after that gets beaten as well.
Yeah, that's definitely losing 2 games is definitely worse than losing 1 game. I think is what it ultimately comes down to. But so we're seeing veteran just kind of discussing who they want to send out next.
Again, they're in a situation where they only have to beat 1 deck because you can't really control what EDG is going to bring out after Bing Chun goes down, but you don't have to worry about the second deck there. So this is why it's so huge that they actually were able to beat the Cthulhu Warrior, because how do you, like, what combination of decks beats Cthulhu Warrior and then your backup deck beats the Hunter? It's very hard to have that situation happen. Now they only have to beat the Hunter, then they can worry about whatever comes out next. The other thing that's easy here for Veteran is that they've already gotten Peggy, so they don't have like that wild card 3 deck person to worry about. They just need to worry about, you know, which of Xiaoguqi, Cheyenne, and Magic Wind has the best 2 deck combo to defeat whatever comes out here.
You know, thinking about it, I think that Veteran's actually in a pretty dangerous spot here. They've already lost with Zoo, and so I think that they might be looking at sending in Shaman potentially, just because I think that's their best counter to Hunter that is still remaining. But after the Shaman, I don't really... I mean, and then they have the Hunter Mirror. But outside of that, I don't really see, like... I think the rest of their decks are slightly unfavored against Hunter. So, like, slightly varying shades of unfavored against Hunter.
Well,
so this could end up being...
Looks like you're correct, because they're sending out Magic Wind, it looks like, at least. At least Magic Wind got up and walked toward the direction of the stage. There we go. Magic Wind's coming out. He's piloting either the Shaman or the Paladin. And Paladin is pretty weak against the Hunter, so yeah, like you mentioned, I think we're going to see the Shaman here.
Yeah, but I mean, and Shaman is probably their best matchup currently that they have left against the Hunter. But if it falls, which it is very able to do, then you're in a really dangerous spot if you're Veteran. I mean, this Hunter. I mean, you hate to say the Hunter could win the next 6 games, but
it could win the next 6 games. Yeah,
it's a very distinct possibility. And I mean, really, it is a bad matchup because assuming it's aggro Shaman, because the aggro shaman can just push so much damage so fast. But at the same time, if you can get like a really big tempo play with the particularly the way that Hunter can really beat the shaman is if they can get a deadly shot onto a flame wreath faceless. That is really big, because then you're using 3 mana to essentially remove 6 mana worth of minion, and so then that can just be such a huge swing early in the game that the Hunter can, and assuming they have decent minions to follow it up with, which Hunter is just full of, they can often just kind of spiral the game out of control from there.
Yep, absolutely. So, like we were mentioning a couple times here, the Shaman is absolutely huge. The Paladin is not a very good matchup against the Hunter, though it can pick up the odd win here and there. So, pretty risky here on the side of Veteran, going for, you know, the situation where they kind of have to win with the Shaman. If they went for something like a Druid Hunter, it's like, you know, a couple of 50-50 matchups. If they went for, you know, Rogue Mage, it's obviously very risky as well. So yeah, it really comes down to the Shaman. It could really snowball here if they cannot win this favored matchup right now.
Yeah, all right. So you might be seeing some slight technical issues here. Just the players seem a little bit confused as to what's going on.
Bing Chuan is like, Bing Chuan, you're bringing Shaman and Paladin, okay? Don't cheat. No cheating.
Yeah, don't be a cheater. But so Magic Wind coming up to the plate again for Veteran. This is only their second player, because we did see Peggy go 3-3 with the first 6 games, and they seem to be having some sort of issue, but they're laughing about it, so it's all good.
maybe they're just laughing to hide their sadness.
Yeah, they're like, oh,
they're crying.
Everything is not working, but if we smile, everything will be better.
By the way, you can see on the left side, on the left sleeve of Magic Wind, Chanmin TV, which is the new site that we're actually getting our stream off of. We are providing the English broadcast off of the Chinese site. It was on Zanchi for quite a while, but, you know, disputes and all that. So now it's on Zanchi and Chanmin. And the good thing about Chanmin is they get lots of sponsors to be able to help them out. Or, excuse me, the HTS itself is able to negotiate new sponsors outside of, you know, just getting all the sponsor money from Zanchi. So more money for the league, which means more money for the players, which is all good. Speaking of money, this is $45,000 on the line for this tournament, $5,000 for this particular matchup between EDG and Veteran. So a lot on the line here right now.
Yeah, it's 5,000 for this matchup, and it pretty much, I think it basically doubles for every game. The stakes double for every game after game after this one.
It doubles and then it triples, which is pretty insane.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's a real big drop off, and yeah, Magic Wind has a very, very good starting hand with his Aggro Shaman. He will be able to curve out very, very nicely and push a lot of damage early, and not too much of an answer from Bing Chuan. I think we'll likely see the Huge Toad, maybe a coin Huge Toad, maybe just a pass. I don't think, based on what we've seen, since it does have Tiger and Infested Wolf and the Unleash the Hounds, at least one Unleash the Hounds, that we may have seen two. I don't recall.
I was about to say I wouldn't be surprised to see coin Freezing Trap here, because when do you have the time to play a 3-mana Argent Squire later on?
That is true. But at any rate, I think it's doubtful that there's a Doomsayer in the deck for Bing Chuan, which can really be another huge thing that Hunter can have going for them against the Shaman. But yeah, we're going to see this Argent Squire Freezing Traps. I was thinking if you could somehow engineer it so the Freezing Trap hits the Totem Golem, but I don't think that.
Yeah, very hard to do.
That would be pretty hard to do, especially with just how sticky the Argent Squire is. It's hard to remove. All right, so we may see a little bit of a 50-50 here, although there is that Lava Shock in hand, so maybe not with the Death Rattle off the Huge Toad. But we are going to probably just see this Huge Toad get Lava Shocked. Ultimately,
yeah, that would protect the Totem Golem, and on turn 3, as Magic Wind, you're not too sad to see either a quick shot or a kill command kill the Totem Golem, even if it came out here. And in fact, the Spit does not even hit the Totem Golem, so really rough position here for Bing Chuan.
Yeah, and this is just, I mean, he may be forced to go for the 50-50 here. I mean, you hate to do that, but especially this early in the game, but yeah, he's got to do it, and it does hit the right target, so at least that went right.
I wouldn't have been too surprised to see, wow, off the top, 4 mana, 7/7, get your memes out. But I was gonna say I wouldn't have been too surprised to see just the Unleashed on that board because you kill off the Abusive, go face. You force Magic Wind to either use 3 damage from the Totem Golem to kill it off, or you can Houndmaster it the following turn. But that's then. This is now, and Bingshan has yet another very, very awkward turn.
Yeah, and so it's looking like, and especially with just the follow-up play of the Argent Horse Rider, it's looking like Magic Wind's just going to continue pushing a ton of damage, and we may see this game ending within the next like even 2 turns with the Lava Burst in hand. Very, very potentially.
All right, looks like we're having issues with the freezing of the stream once more. Apologies for that, guys.
Yeah, but it's looking really rough. But if/when Magic Wind wins this game, it's looking very hard for Bingshan to come back. I'm thinking EDG will likely send, assuming that the Warlock that Inyan has is Zoo. I think we're likely to see Inyan be the next player up to bat for EDG.
Oh, okay. We're having lots of issues apparently. We're gonna switch over to the Zonchi site because Chanmin is having problems. And looks like Magic Wind just won, so there's that.
Yep, well, there you go. So I think that we're likely going to see Inyan be the next player for EDG, assuming that it's a Zoo Warlock. But that's by no means a guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you mentioned, the EDG has to switch over. Let me just get the stream on this little screen here. But yeah, you're mentioning Warlock. The other classes that they have Warlock and Mage from Enion, and they have Rogue, Priest, or Druid from EDG. So you're saying that they probably bring out Enion here?
I think so, because even if the Warlock were to lose, I mean, because like we saw, even if the Zoo were to lose, because we saw that happen earlier, so it's definitely a realistic possibility. The Mage doesn't have the worst matchup. Looks like we might be going into a break here really quick.
All right, see you guys when we come back. Welcome back, everyone, to Hearthstone Team Story. This is the playoffs, the round of 4. I'm D2. With me is Jay. We currently have a 4-3 lead for Veteran over EDG in this best of 17. So they're going to 9. We have 5 decks remaining for EDG and 6 remaining for Veteran. And yeah, this is the last hero standing though, so the fewer decks remaining, that means you're losing. And we do have Enian coming up, like you mentioned, and he's going to be most likely piling that Warlock. I was looking through the rest of the decks that EDG had during the break, and it doesn't seem like they have much going for them as far as things that counter aggro Shaman.
Yeah, I think that if this Warlock were to lose, that would be pretty kind of bad news a little bit for EDG, because they're really, and this is kind of the situation that you get into a lot with Last Hero Standing, is if you only have one counter deck to like one of the most popular decks, then you can often find yourself in a lot of trouble. Because if your counter deck loses, which is, it's Hearthstone, so that's always a definite possibility, then sometimes you can just find yourself, because we saw that a lot over the weekend at the Seat Story Cup, where some teams or some players rather, were just bringing one counter to Warlock, and then either it was getting banned or it was just losing, and then the Zoo would go on to 3-0 the rest of their decks. So that's definitely something that can. It's one of the dangers of Last Hero Standing.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because the Shaman does pretty reasonably against all types of mages, which is the second deck here from Enion. Looks like my refresh of this stream made that enter bar at the bottom go away, which is always nice news. I'm not sure. I think that both streams are competing to see which one is the more annoying, or maybe Zanchi decided that Zanchi decided that they're going to sabotage the Chanmin stream because the Chanmin stream randomly went down. Looks like it's back up again, so that is an option in the future if we need to go ahead and do that. But starting off pretty nice here for Magic Wind in this matchup. It's not typically very favored for the aggro Shaman. It basically depends on who gets the early game, and typically the Shaman struggles to get the early game. Well, that's one of Zoo's main, one of the best things about Zoo is they're able to get the early game pretty handily.
Yeah, Magic Wind we see here using the Lightning Bolt over the Rockbiter because he recognizes he doesn't really have anything to do in the next turn except hero power anyway, so saving the Rockbiter for use with the Doomhammer. Also, it's just more versatile and doesn't overload, so that's always a good thing. It's just better. And so now he does get that taunt totem, which is pretty, reasonable. I mean, I think any totem would have been about the same there, but he does have this Flame Wreath Faceless for next turn, so that's looking all right. And does get a 2-drop off the tap, which is very, very good news for him.
Yep, Enion able to take out that taunt totem, but like you mentioned, this Flame Wreath Faceless likely to come out. I mean, you don't really want to Lightning Storm this board because Lightning Storm is your best tool to deal with a massive board from the zoo, and you probably only run one in your deck. So yeah, it certainly makes sense for him to hold on to that. This is actually not being shown. Let me just go ahead and fix that. This is Enion.
Yes, alright, so kind of big juggle, and the juggle does hit, so this Power Overwhelming will be able to very neatly clear off this Flame Wreath Faceless. Now, do you pull, as Magic Wind, do you pull the trigger on this Lightning Storm on 3 minions? I mean, you might have to, just because these are, well, 2 of them are pretty impactful minions, but he is instead going to choose to just use this Argent Horse Rider to clear off the Knife Juggler. We are going to see a tap into what looks like it's going to be, we're going to see trying to set up some reasonably sticky minions, because if Inian can get a kind of can bump the Imp Gang boss into something and not have it die, then or not have any other minions die, then there's an outside chance that Gormott can get some value next turn.
Alright, Magic Wind was kind of waiting for the board to get out of control before he committed to the Lightning Storm, but he's kind of put himself in the position where now Lightning Storm doesn't really do a whole lot. I was curious as to whether he was going to just push 10 damage to face right now, but he's going to hold on to it. This Rock Batter can be pretty useful in getting through something like Defender of Argus right now, if it is used, and in fact it is going to be used here. So Magic Wind actually set himself up reasonably well, all things considered. If he had just gone all face there, he might be in a lot more trouble right now.
Yeah, and this is just sort of what Zoo does to Shaman. I mean, we did see Shaman kind of pull the upset earlier with No Tomorrow beating Peggy's Zoo with his own Shaman. However, kind of seeing the opposite side of the coin here.
This is going to be a really big roll, though. He's going to hit the in-game boss, then Storm, and if it rolls high in the Defender, he's a clear board, which is obviously really nice.
Yeah, so he does. Yeah, this is going to be a pretty big deal, because he will need to kill off. He will be certainly killing off this Darkshire Councilman. With
everything's gonna die. He could maybe go to face, but he doesn't really have the backup in his hand. Doesn't have Lava Burst. Doesn't have, obviously any Lightning Bolt because he already used that. So there's no real burst. He needs to clear off this board and see if he can't maintain board control the following turn.
And he does have a reasonable follow up. He does have the Feral Spirits.
Oh
and
no.
Finley for this turn. Oh, and that is kind of a big deal, actually. Leaving a minion on board for Zoo is never good, and it will actually allow also the Sea Giant to be played next turn.
Yeah, Magic Wind would have liked to be able to use get the life tap hero power there, but he has only 7 health remaining, so it's not the best situation to be using that. He figures that I just have to use whatever I get off the top and use my Hunter hero power from here on out. And Enion has a pretty reasonable turn right now. It's going to actually go ahead and put up the Direwolf Alpha and the Voidwalker and Direwolf Alpha instead of playing the Gormok. Floats a lot of mana, but it does prevent him from dying. I think Enion feels like if he just doesn't die, then he wins the game here. And it doesn't die in the next couple turns, I mean.
Yeah. And so we're going to see, these Feral Spirits are a pretty big deal, actually, and actually that Abusive Sergeant is a pretty big deal, too. Allows for a much better clear on this Voidwalker.
Yeah, Enion was thinking that he just didn't want to see that exact combination of being able to deal with his board while putting up a taunt. Enion felt like he had enough stuff on board that whatever Magic Wind did, he could just win the game the following turn, but hasn't really worked out for him. And let's see if he can maybe play this Gormok. He needs to pick up something right off the top, but maybe he's too afraid to tap. If he goes ahead and goes for the Sea Giant plus the Gormok, actually he could play all of his hand if he doesn't tap. But yeah, I think that tapping, all those cards are not too useful, especially because you're on the
And a Soulfire would end it. No Soulfire, though.
Yeah. So now what do you pick? Do you go for the taunt? Do you go for being able to kill one of these Feral Spirits right away? If you pick up the Voidwalker, you can play Voidwalker, Possessed Villager, and either you can't play Gormok. You can play that and the Sea Giant as well, which obviously just wins the game, gets through basically anything.
Yeah, I mean, he has to be careful, though. He could just die. Actually...
Well, that's why he was careful with the Voidwalker, right? Because he's just trying to stay alive as hard as possible. That is not damage, unfortunately, for Magic Wind. And he's trying to see what kind of combination of attacks that can give him lethal here. 2, 4, 8, 10. He has 1 damage off lethal right now.
Oh, and that is never that's a really bad position to be in. Can he clear to the point where he won't die next turn? Because you can't use the Doom Hammer to clear the board anymore.
Well, you can hit the Void Walker if you want to kind of preserve your other minions. And I think this is correct.
Oh, that is true.
1 damage is typically 2 unless there's some sort of Knife Juggler juggle. So yeah, use your face right here. You don't want to use if you can help it. You don't want to use your Feral Spirits right now. So yeah, he just wants to get as little damage on his Feral Spirits as possible because that's the big deal as far as being able to kill. And yeah, I think he just uses his Abusive Sergeant here. He probably has some sort of lethal next turn. And so what does Xenion need to win him the game right now? He needs... It's kind of hard, actually. It's really hard to get through this.
Yeah, a Soulfire would do. Oh, if he can pick up a minion, though, that costs 3 or less. If he taps and picks up a minion that costs 3 or less, then he wins with the Gormok. Which Zoo is just full of those, and there it is.
Yeah, Knife Juggler as well, just for the BM win potentially. But
yeah,
he's able to get the Gormok and get the win on the face here. And that is absolutely huge for EDG. If they lost that, it could snowball pretty heavily. And yeah, you can see him exhaling like, whew, okay.
Yeah. That was very close, but yeah. So down to his last couple of health. Very, very close game there. Magic Wind looking like a little bit like wish I could have gotten that. But now he does have, I believe it's Paladin that Magic Wind has.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Paladin. And so this is likely an Azoth Paladin, which is reasonable because you kind of you do want to pair the Shaman with something that beats Zoo in general. I think just because that's what's most likely going to be brought out to counter a Shaman. Or you want to pair the Shaman with something that beats Zoo. And we do see actually both teams went for that approach. So yeah, we are going to see an Azoth Paladin here, which is a reasonable matchup against Zoo.
I don't know. Paladin is like reasonable against Zoo, but if it doesn't get its board clears, then it starts to struggle. And as basically the kind of dream hand for the Paladin would be Doomsayer into Pyre Equality and a couple Consecrations in your hand as well. So Magic Wind just kind of trying to figure out if you can pick up those cards. Does have the Ooze as an early game or early board option. But other than that, the Equality Consecration is not nearly good as Pyre Equality in this matchup because it comes on turn 6 or turn 5 with a coin, and that typically is a bit too late.
Yeah, and so we're seeing here just playing out the Direwolf Alpha because it's 2 mana and it pushes an extra damage. So actually kind of wondering exactly what he wants to do here. Likely going to see this Acidic Swamp Ooze because Zoo is not famous for running a lot of weapons. And so yeah, we are just going to see in response this Imp Gang Boss. Very tough to remove for the Paladin unless they have a True Silver Champion, which unfortunately for Magic Wind he does not currently.
Yeah, that is absolutely huge, and being able to deal with this, and just being able to deal with the minions, the initial minions that come out, because like we mentioned earlier, it's going to be hard for him to get out this Equality Consecration. Enyon is actually able to feed off of this Accolade. Obviously, Magic Wind wanted the card drop, but it makes Enyon's board even bigger now, and puts up another sticky minion on the board. So this is extremely hard for Magic Wind to deal with.
Yeah, and we could see Enyon even potentially going into the Doomguard next turn, although that might be a little bit overcommitting to the board at that point. You kind of, with 2 Imp Gang Bosses out, you kind of want to leave it at 5 minions if possible, because then, even in the case of a Pyro Equality or Equality Consecrate, you're still left with a guaranteed 2 Imps left on board. So I do think that leaving 5 minions, when you have 2 Imp Gang Bosses, you want to only have 5 minions on board.
And Magic Wind's actually going to commit to the Consecration here. Next turn, he can Consecration again and save the Equality for Pyro in the future. I think Magic Wind just getting a little bit desperate right now. He's like, I need to pick up something anyway, so I might as well go with this. It could be Kodo next turn just to be very, very greedy. So yeah, Magic Wind's hand is just not very well equipped to deal with it, so I can understand him going for the greedy play right now.
Yeah, and right here we'll see he does choose to play out this Darkshire Councilman. I kind of disagree with playing more than 5 minions out right now, but
this is very interesting because he goes for Enyon values the knife to face over the 2 damage from the Darkshire Councilman just in case his board gets cleared. which certainly makes sense in a way, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
I can understand that.
but yeah, like you mentioned, it's just gonna be this clear is not gonna give Enion both of his imps.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that you just kind of feel like you want to play around. So maybe a little bit of a maybe Indian should have thought about it a little bit harder there. Sir Finley, kind of an unusual choice for the N'Zoth Paladin, so kind of an
Wow.
interesting tech. Picking up a one drop, very big there, allows to play the Doom Guard with no downside, and really going to push a lot of damage. And so,
Yeah, I think that's what Union was thinking.
oh
Like, even though he overcommitted in a way to the board last turn, this is actually a huge Kodo right here because you
yeah,
want to kill the 1/7 obviously. Kills off the Voidwalker, so the second best thing, perhaps the first best thing if you consider that you can now kill off the Doomguard since the taunt is not in the way. But yeah, just gonna be this Dark Peddler coming out. Anyway, to go back to earlier, even though he didn't, oh, is that just lethal? No, it's one off lethal. Even though he didn't kill off, even though he missed off on the one imp, he didn't want to tap because that would just be more cards he's discarding.
drawing
Because of the Doom
the
Guard.
yeah, okay, so yeah, and kind of a big draw. That humility was a huge draw last turn because that was a top deck for Magic Win. So otherwise, he was going to be forced to play the Aldor on the Doomsayer, and I don't think that would have, or that wouldn't have ended up being enough if he got the what was it, the Soulfire off the Dark Peddler. And I think you might have to take the armor up here.
He's thinking about whether he wants to go for Druid or the
Mhm.
or the armor up, like you mentioned. The armor up obviously gives you the most health, but he does have Rag in hand, and yeah, going for the Druid would be reasonable as well if he wants to pick up something. But at this low health, I suppose Magic Wind feels like he can't really afford to take any damage anyway.
Oh, that's not a great. Well, okay, so
50/50
here,
lethal. He has 50/50 lethal
yeah.
no matter what comes up, but he's just gonna go for the Doomguard anyway and just tap
Mm.
into something. Um, So Enion feels like he has more than 50/50 to win, which is debatable, especially because Rag is coming
Yeah.
up right now and Forbidden Healing. Rag is it's kind of risky. You might just go for the Forbidden Healing for 16 health and then use the Rag next turn.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better route to play. I think in a matchup that's fairly unfavored like this, I think that going for a 50-50 lethal would have been very, very reasonable for Union there. So I don't really understand his
Well,
decision not to. I mean, I understand his decision not to, but I think it might have been
well, if he misses the
not the best
50/50,
decision.
then his opponent's at 3 and he has a 2/3 on the board. Now he has a 5/7 on board. So it's kind of like you guarantee that you put yourself in a really nice position rather than you go for, it's either 50/50 or disaster kind of. And Magic,
All right.
I do like getting the large minion on board here to be able to contest with the Doom Guard. If you go for the Forbidden Healing, you're kind of just taking 5 damage the next turn no matter what, which mitigates the amount of healing you can do. 4 damage off the top here would be
Soulfire,
lethal. Yeah,
yeah,
Soulfire.
Soulfire PO does do it. Gets neither of those there, so Forbidden Healing will do a lot of work in an upcoming turn. Getting out a reasonable board presence though,
Yeah,
right here.
yeah. Barring getting lethal here, this is about as good as you can get. You use all your mana, you put up a nice board,
Oh.
and this is extremely hard for Magic Wind to deal with right now.
It's important though the Magic one remembers to kill off the Sir Finley because since it's damaged, it would take the Ragnaros heal, which you definitely don't want in this scenario. Because you want to make it 100% that the Ragnaros heals your own face. But even so, he's looking like I think he definitely needs to use this, the Hammer Wrath.
Well, he could just hold him on and heal his face for 10. And
That
then
is also true.
and so either way, he's taking off. Also, the Hammer of Wrath takes off 3 damage. So does the Keeper of Voldemort. So I guess in a way, you might as well just do it this way. And he, like you mentioned, he probably wants to just sack off some of his minions here, or sack off at least the Sir Finley, so that if he Forbidden Healings his face, then Rack heals itself, and you're in a good spot. Okay, he's gonna do it this way. It looks like, which is perfectly reasonable. Heals himself for 10, and he's able to start clearing off this board. I don't like this decision though. Oh,
I
he's
think
gonna,
it's more.
he's gonna heal himself for 18. Okay, so I thought he was gonna clear off the flame imp and then just suicide, Sir Finley into something else. But he instead opts for the 18 healing. The only problem with this is that he's still pretty far away from getting to that Doomguard in the first place. So is it better to heal for 8, or is it better to start getting rid of this board?
Yeah, and so we do see the Sea Giant picked up, and so he's considering whether it's safe to go down to 8. And outside of the Ragnaros Fire Lord, you're feeling kind of okay about it because you do want to, but he is choosing not to play out the Flame Imp and is instead just going to put more damage onto Magic Wind.
Yes, this is the issue with Magic Wind playing a bit too safe last turn, right? Because if he had killed off the Flame Imp, yeah, he would be down about 8 health right now, but he could clear off the rest of the board, right? He could hit the Doom Guard, he could use the Keeper of Oldemon on the Sea Giant. Now you have a 2/3 and a 3/3 on board, and you're taking like way less damage, right? Actually, he wouldn't be at 3. He would actually be at 7. He'd be at 7 because the flame would be dead already. So he's only healing for 4, and now he can't clear the rest of the board. So I think Magic Wind playing a bit too safe last turn, it could cost him the game.
Yeah, I do agree. It's looking like a kind of a rough scenario right now for Magic Wind. Oh, he is going to end up
Yeah, he doesn't.
trading.
He's been avoiding this attack, but he needed to make this attack last turn. He's able to use the Solemn Vigil now, which is reasonable, and armor up. I don't think you can ever afford to play this Doomsayer because you just kind of die most of the time. And on board, Eneon has 10 damage. It's very hard. It's much harder to do 3 damage than 1 damage for the Zoo.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Misses the 50-50. Magic Wind kind of smiling wistfully.
And there's
There, and that is going to be just lethal with the power overwhelming. The BM tap though, just
just to show him who's boss. And this is
yeah.
this is the power of Zoo and why it's was picked in, or why it was such a risky thing, for Magic Wind to pair the Shaman and the Paladin, because sometimes it just kind of loses to the same thing. Obviously, Paladin is going to be in a really like awkward spot no matter what, but still.
All right, so yeah, so we do see Inyan taking 2 games with the Zoo. So Inyan maybe the savior of EDG here, kind of pulling him back from a little bit of a rocky situation. So let's see. So for veteran, they have exhausted both. Yeah, they have exhausted both Magic Wind and Peggy. So now I think against Zoo, their best bet may very well be Sinin Xiaoguqi and the it may be Sinin Xiaoguqi with he has both Rogue, which is sort of a 50-50-ish matchup against the Zoo, and then he also has a Mage, which depending on what sort of Mage it is, could prove to be a reasonable matchup. I mean, Tempo I'd say is okay against Zoo. It's not the best, but then if it were to be on the outside chance it were Freeze Mage, it would be very, very good matchup against Zoo. So I think we're likely to see Xiaoguqi come out here because the other option is Xiaoyan with his Druid and Hunter, which neither one matches up particularly well against the Zoo.
Yeah, this is the first situation where a team has to pick a player to go up against more than one deck, which is a really big deal. And so now not only do they have to beat the Zoo, but they have to put themselves in the position to beat the Mage as well. And if they don't, they're very, very far behind. Because from there, they have to face 2 players essentially with 1 player and only 2 decks. So yeah, I do agree with you. The Druid and the Hunter don't really work too well against the Zoo no matter what. And in fact, even if they go with a Rogue, and it's not even the best matchup for the Rogue either. Obviously, you mentioned the Freeze Mage. That could be a possibility. But if it is the Tempo Mage, they could find themselves in a lot of trouble. It's going to be Xiaoguqi coming out like we expected. But yeah, we really hope for his sake that it's going to be the Freeze Mage. Otherwise, he could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, because the Rogue, a lot of people talk about Rogue being like really favored against Zoo, but ultimately it's like, at best, it's a 50-50. A lot of people would argue that it's much worse for the Rogue than that. But since this isn't the Leroy version of the Zoo, I would say that it's about 50-50, maybe even slightly favored towards the Rogue on the outside, maybe a little, depending on what specifically cards are in the Miracle Rogue. But overall, it's really, I think Xiaoguqi really needs to win with this Rogue, because I think he almost certainly will be playing the Rogue, unless it's Freeze Mage, in which case he'll definitely play the Freeze Mage. But if it is Rogue, he really needs to. But it does look like it's Freeze Mage, so that is good news for Xiaoguqi. And very smart thinking from Veteran here, coming up with 2 decks that they consider to be Zoo counters.
Yeah, definitely. And that certainly fits in with the rest of their plan here. Because if they didn't have a way to deal with Zoo at this point, then they would have been in a lot of trouble. And like you mentioned, Rogue would not be the best situation to do it. All right, so Xiaoguji's going to lead off with his Blood Mage Thalnos just to get something on the board. He could have played the Doomsayer to kind of slow down the Zoo a bit here, but obviously you kind of want to save that for a different situation. And in fact, Xiaoguji is already reaching for it, realizing that this might be his best opportunity. Obviously, Crazed Alchemist can ruin your day if you decide to wait for Phrase plus Doomsayer. So he's going to just play it out right now and really slow down the Zoo.
All right, so I'm going to make a somewhat aggressive statement here, maybe based on what we've seen. But with that Antonitis, I'm going to predict that Xiaoguji is playing a Reno version of the Freeze Mage. I mean, now I know we've been seeing that more frequently. I mean, when Freeze Mages, on the rare occasion when Freeze Mages run, we've been seeing more Reno recently. But the older, laughing, like kind of torch, like roaring, Forgotten Torch based Freeze Mage typically didn't run Archmage Antonitis. So I'm going to make the prediction that this deck will have Reno Jackson included, and the Flame Strike adds to that suspicion as well.
Xiaoguji is like kind of counting the cards in hand right now, because if he plays his Arcane Intellect, he goes to 8, and if you play Mirror Images is not always run, but it's running here. So he goes to 7 right now, so if both of these cards on board draw a card, he'll go to 9, and he won't overdraw. So Xiaoguji being very diligent about what he's doing here. And let's see if Inyan can hit these juggles. Kind of important, because then he gets to push extra damage to face. Hits the first juggle. Let's see if he can do for the second one. I think it's a 1 in 3 chance that this happens, and doesn't hit the second one. A 1 in 3 chance it hits both, by the way.
Yeah. So we have So we're looking, kind of a lot of pressure being put on by Inyan. Actually, this is the sort of matchup where this is actually the sort of situation where it's very, very heavily favored for Freeze Mage, but this is the sort of situation where sometimes Zoo can just kind of run away with it and do Zoo things, and when that happens, there's not a lot that any deck can do. But he does, fortunately, Xiaoguji does have options. He has the Ice Block to save off any lethal. If he could pick up a Blizzard or a Frost over here, that would be very big, but he is unable to do that. We're likely to see the Mirror Entity come down, maybe even the Doomsayer along with it. Or the Mirror Image, rather.
Yeah, kind of interesting that Xiaoguji already decided to ping up the Night Juggler, since there weren't many minions to be played on the board anyway. But he's just going to go ahead and develop his Ice Block so that he, has that on board, because he wants a Flame Strike next turn, and if his opponent has too much stuff on board, then he might just die. And, yeah. Okay, looks like we have another freeze, unfortunately, which is unfortunate. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and continue to fill out the board. Immediately picks up the Leper Gnome, which certainly makes sense. If there's ever a Doomsayer on board in a situation where your opponent could just die because he has less than 1 health, then yeah, he could just go ahead and play the Leper Gnome for the guaranteed lethal there, which certainly makes sense. Flame Strike coming out here, going to leave behind an Imp, but mostly clears the board, and Xiaoguji is finally picking up what he needs in that Blizzard, and can maybe piece together a win right now.
Yeah, it's looking much better, because really what it takes for Freeze Mage to win this matchup is just one big clear. Normally the best way to do that is with the Frost Nova and Doomsayer combo, but Flame Strike is pretty good at doing that as well. And, well, Flame Strike, Blizzard, that sort of thing. Blizzard is really good at delaying the game. So really you're just trying to do what Freeze Mage does, which is just stall out the game and eventually win. And so, yeah, here, this is getting into the position where it's really hard for Freeze Mage to actually lose, especially with the second Blizzard. And it's just, this is why this matchup is so one-sided, because Freeze Mage just does this, and then especially if there's a Reno in the deck, if you can draw into the Reno in the next few turns, then it's just going to be over.
Yeah, Xiaoguji, it's really funny, because you typically want all the same kind of card in your hand as the Freeze Mage. You either want all draw, like he has right here, or, there's a Reno, by the way, which isn't activatable, but he either wants all draw or he wants all burn, so you can just kill his opponent. The middle ground where you have some burn, but not enough draw, and you're just kind of stuck with this awkward hand, is just the nightmare for Zoo, or excuse me, for the Freeze Mage. And Xiaoguji being able to have ways to kind of to stall his opponent and draw into future cards and just kind of keep that train rolling is very good for him. And on the other hand, if he had burn, he could just win the game outright. So reasonable hand for Xiaoguji. All that was to say that, and yeah, looking like he's on his way to picking this up, unless Inyan can kind of cheese out a win pretty soon here.
Yeah, and so yeah, playing out that Forbidden Ritual, more draw, and yeah, I think we're likely to see. I mean, I would be a big fan of just to keep the Antonitis train rolling, just seeing, yeah, we're going to see the draw, the ping, and then the
And yep, that's just
blizzard,
lethal.
and just keeping it going.
Lethal next turn. So Enion needs an Eater of Secrets or else he's dead. Eater of Secrets and lethal. So yeah, it's very, very hard to do in this spot, and he's just going to give it up.
Yep, we're gonna see the concede. So Freeze Mage, nice little bit there. Looks like Inyan, he will have a mage of his own. It's well, actually, in this sort of a last year standing format, we may actually see the Freeze Mage because we did from veteran, but I think it's much more likely we see a Tempo Mage, which Tempo Mage traditionally not too great against Freeze Mage, but more recently has actually kind of come into its own a little bit more, especially with the introduction of Ice Block.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be very interesting to see a Freeze Mage mirror right now, because
It's
we
been a
haven't
while
seen that
since
in a
we've seen a Freeze
long
Mage
time. And nope, it's not going to be a Freeze
No.
Mage mirror. However, the deck from Inian can be kind of considered like a pseudo Freeze Mage because it typically goes for the late game. This isn't your Western Tempo Mage. This is the Chinese Tempo Mage, which tops out at the Kabbalist Tomes and the Ethereal Conjurers, that kind of stuff. So once you kind of, if you're not able to get a win right off the bat as the Tempo Mage, just kind of teasing out of the game, you typically settle into that late game where you're kind of Kabbalist Toming into lots of spells and clearing your opponent's board. Obviously, Xiaoku is not going to really have too much of a board, but it's just going to be kind of stall for a while here from both players.
Yeah, and so because this Chinese Tempo Mage is a little bit slower than the Western version, plays a little bit more like Freeze Mage sometimes, because a lot of the time you spend saving up for a big combo with things like what we see in hand and on board here with the Mana Worm and the Flame Waker, and so we are going to see this Doomsayer played. Will likely get punished unless they're the unluckiest arcane missiles of all time. Actually, no, because we could still see it with the extra spell damage. So this is actually kind of important arcane missiles here. If he can get this, although ultimately,
The question
yeah,
is if Enion does decide to go for this, he could just not go for it in the first place and just kind of give up this board. But he is going to end up going for it. He needs to get a lot of these missiles to connect. Yeah, I was gonna say I think he needs to play this Arcane Blast first so he doesn't waste any pings, but he does it. He does decide to go ahead and do it in second, and now he doesn't even need the second Arcane Missiles anymore, which certainly works out for him. And Doomsayer and Mirror Images cleared.
Yep. Okay, so we're likely to see probably. Oh, we are just going to see this used a coin into Loot Hoarder. Okay, I can see. Just trying to cycle as much as humanly possible is Xiao Qi or Xiao Qi. I'm sorry. Every time I always manage to screw up his name at least once.
Yeah, I blame him making or romanizing his name that way when it's pronounced a completely different way. But wow, gonna actually go ahead and use Arcane Blast right off the bat, even though it's a lot of damage, just to get more damage to the face here. I don't think that was quite necessary, but
Yeah.
I suppose that works out. He gets opponent down to 14, and he has the refill with that Kabbalist Tome.
Yeah, we are going to see the Frost Nova Doomsayer. Reno, not quite. I don't think he's going to be activatable yet, because usually the duplicates in this sort of a deck, you usually see duplicate Fireballs, duplicate Frostbolts, duplicate Ice Lances, and then as well,
Wow.
among others. But those are the
Wow.
ones that we have.
That is quite possibly the worst Kabbalist Tome he could have gotten, and picks up the
Oh,
Flame Strike
my-
off the top. Those are completely useless cards against Freeze Mage. Maybe Polymorph can be used here. I suppose he could have gotten Shatter instead of Polymorph, but yeah, your Polymorph's just going to be used on this act, like just to cut off the draw. You can use Blizzard, Flame Strike to kill off Antonius later or what have you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna. Yeah, you're never gonna have a. You're rarely gonna have a better target than that for polymorph. Although lots of draw, so kind of Shoguchi's kind of finally exhausted all the draw that's in his hand. So he's left with board clears, which are not bad unless your minion. Well, if your opponent in this matchup isn't playing minions, then you're sort of winning already.
Look at that Blizzard
But
value.
yeah, Blizzard taking out a 1/1 and a 3/2. Well, which is not terrible value against a freeze mage, if we're being perfectly honest.
I think it obviously he was valuing the ping to the face, but I wonder if it would have been better just to use Flame Strike because Blizzard can stop. He doesn't know there's Reno, but he might be able to suspect it. It can stop an Alexstrasza from attacking, and you don't have to use face damage to do so. Whereas Flame Strike doesn't really kill much other than this 1/1 on board.
Yeah, and that was actually a big draw for Inyan, or at least it could have been with the draw into the Arcane Intellect, but didn't pick up anything super impactful. So, well, actually, no, they picked up the Flame Waker, which is bad. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see. Yeah, we're gonna see a Blizzard, and we do see also that the Reno is activatable now, so that may just spell the end because, and that's why Reno in Mage. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes you just don't draw what you need to draw, but sometimes it can feel super overpowering because with the ice block, you can almost guarantee that your opponent's going to set you to like 1 and you're going to die at a pretty low health. And at that point, Reno just gets so much value and it feels like really, really good.
And speaking of which, I think we're going to see that right here. So 3, 6, and then plus 4 pings is going to be down to 10 and then 1. He's going to set his opponent to 1 right now. Not going to quite pop the block, which is pretty perfect for Shakuchi. He can actually just clear this board and the next turn play Reno and really wreck his opponent. Wow, even as Cult Apothecary. What in the world?
Oh yeah. That's one of those that sometimes you see in the Reno freeze mages. It's kind of debatable because the more duplicates you run, obviously, the more consistent your deck gets, but also the less the less likely it is that your Reno will be able to work when you need it to work.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Jay. I'm not really familiar with these rank 5 freeze mages. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, I suppose it works better in freeze mage than it would in Reno Lock because you can just go Frost Nova Cult Apothecary and get the maximum value out of it, without taking a bunch of damage the following turn. This is very problematic here for Enion though. He needs his next Kabbalist Tome to be like Fireball Kabbalist Tome. Or he needs his Yogg to be, a beast. Basically, like, ball or what's that called? Ball spiders, and then like infest on top of that to get like the double value, and then call the wild, something like that. He needs a crazy situation to get back in this game. But he's gonna stick it out. He's out. Shakuchi doesn't have lethal quite yet, so it certainly makes sense for him to just wait it out here.
Yeah, alright, so yeah, double Flame Strike. We're probably going to see one Flame Strike used because, again, it's not going to get much better value than this. He does choose to use the one from he does choose to use the Flame Strike gotten from the Kabbalist Tome just so that he, just to limit as much information as possible. Big pickup there, the Alexstrasza will allow 15 damage effectively to be pushed to Inyan's face, looking at ending the game sooner. This pickup of the spell damage will allow, the pickup of the Cold Sorcerer will allow the Fireball plus Ping to take care of this Alexstrasza. But looking pretty grim overall for Inyan.
Yeah, Shakuchi is just he's really close to just taking out the game right now. Gonna go ahead and use that Forgotten Torch, pick up a Fireball, put another Fireball in his deck. This makes it very hard to deal with Antonites in the first place. And if Inyan doesn't clear this Antonites right now, this game's just gonna be over.
Yep, and it's looking unlikely unless Fireball is picked up here, which it is not, and that's just going to be, well, it's not quite going to be game. Actually, the Flame Strike is going to do quite a bit of work here.
Yeah, he's going to prevent 1 turn lethal, but he's certainly going to be dead to 2 turn lethal, unless Yogg is he needs to pick up Yogg, and it needs to be the best Yogg that ever Yogged.
Actually, that is just lethal. Because the Fireball plus double Ice Lance.
Yeah, it is. Fireball, double Ice Lance is lethal. I think Shakuchi doesn't really see it because he's looking through the deck. But I think he might realize it right now. He's like, wait a second, I have these 2 Ice Lances. Ah, there you go. Okay, he finds it.
Yep.
All right. Shakuchi able to pick up the win, and he's actually able to defeat both decks of Enion. So EDG put themselves in a really good position. Okay, the Hearthstone clan apparently bugged out, but this is lethal on board. Even if this disconnects, they're gonna give 100% the lethal to Shakuchi. Not only did he have lethal, but he spotted the lethal. He already pointed the card. Like, there's no way they're not gonna give it to him. So yeah, I think the admins are telling him, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah, they should be. All right, so yeah, they are just going to let him have the win. And it seems like they've had some connectivity issues recently in the studio over this last, today, but even over the last week or so. But anyway, so yeah, we do see Yeah, Xiaoguchi taking 2 games with Freeze Mage, and I gotta say, D2, I do have a confession to make. So I really like Freeze Mage. You know this. You razz me for it every time. Every time Freeze Mage comes up. So I mentally often tend to like EDG a little bit more than maybe some of the other teams. So mentally, I kind of pull for them. But it's fun. As soon as veterans started playing Freeze Mage, I wanted to see the Freeze Mage win. I like Freeze Mage so much it actually overpowers my love of anything else.
I think I'm kicking. This is going to be a solo cast from now on.
No, but yeah, but Freeze Mage though, in all seriousness, I think that's a very good choice in this last year's same format, like I was saying before, because it allows you to pick maybe slightly riskier decks. And much as I love Freeze Mage, in the current meta, it just has so many bad matchups, especially in the Conquest format. It can just get absolutely steamrolled by an entire lineup. It can very easily get 3-0'd by many lineups or just lose a ton of games. But in a format like this, where you get to choose what it plays against, it's a really good counter to things like we saw Zoo, and it's normally it's okay against Tempo Mage, but it did manage to pull out a really good win there based on some kind of subpar draws from the Tempo Mage. So looking pretty good right now for a veteran.
Yeah, the biggest factor is that in Conquest you can't choose what you play against, like you just mentioned, because both teams re-choose their deck until it's the last game. Until one side only has one deck remaining, you can't choose what you play against. And so, yeah, the Freeze Mage being able to choose what it goes up against is very important. And it also puts the other team in kind of a weird situation in certain situations because they have to pick a deck that beats Freeze Mage. And oftentimes, whatever deck you beat Freeze Mage with can kind of be a polarizing deck. That said, though, EDG only has one player left in Lo Xiaobu, and he's running Rogue, Priest, and Druid, which...
That is a very weak lineup against Freeze Mage, I gotta say.
Yeah, you kind of just play the Druid out and hope, but Druid doesn't have combo anymore. It's still, I would say, favored against Freeze Mage.
Really?
Yeah, I would say it's favored against Freeze Mage. Okay, you love Freeze Mage way too much, okay?
Yeah, that is true. So I'm a little bit biased there, but again, in all seriousness, I feel like Druid. I mean, unless you can get some really good, if you can get something like you can get the armor off of Feral Rage or something, then sure. But otherwise, or if you can get a really fast start. But other than that, I feel like it's kind of just a standard Freeze Mage versus a mid-range / control deck. I mean, I guess it does depend, like if it's the Jackie Chan version or if it's the more no wisps of the old gods version. So that can make a little bit of a difference. But I would say it's if it's favored toward Druid, it's very, very slightly.
You love Freeze Mage way too much. Druid, the thing about Druid, like you said, if Druid can get a fast start, but that's basically what Druid does. They have Nourish, they have Innervate, they have Wild Growth, they have Mire Keeper, they have 8 sources of ramp in the deck, and so every single time they're just kind of ahead in mana against the Freeze Mage. And so Freeze Mage, they can do all they want as far as freezing the board and trying to take it out, but they're going to take way too much damage in the meantime. And Druid has several good ways of refilling the board. In whether it be Violet Teacher or Fandral, and Violet Teacher both have 5 health, by the way, which are really annoying for Freeze Mage to deal with.
That's true.
So it's hard to deal with all of them at the same time. And the Freeze Mage only has basically 5 sources of AoE. It's double Frost Nova, double Blizzard, and a Flame Strike, and you can't always draw all of those. But here we come out with Lo Xiaobu against Xiaoguchi. Very similar names in a way. At least I get mixed up in my mind. But Lo Xiaobu was the 2014 BlizzCon qualifier for China, or at least one of 4. Xiaoguchi has been a mainstay on VG for quite a while here. Now their team name is Veteran. But we'll see if Xiaoguchi can bring this back. He has 3 decks against 4, 1 player against 2. Certainly the odds are stacked against him, but I wouldn't count him out.
Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah, you can't count him out at all. And it looks like it's maybe a slightly more Death Rattle focused rogue that he's bringing out here. N'Zoth, likely in the deck somewhere. We see with the Undercity Huckster, and deciding to hold on to an Azure Drake, knowing that this is a Freeze Mage. Knows that he can play like slightly more slowly and assemble. He's not in danger of being rushed down like you would sometimes against a Tempo Mage if they had a really good opening.
This is a bad omen overall, though, for EDG because they feel like Rogue is their best matchup against Freeze Mage, which is a very problematic situation to be in. And even though can be inconsistent. It can oftentimes just win the game against Rogue when they run out of damage.
Yeah, that is extremely true. And so we're seeing a little bit of loading issues here, but yes, we're gonna see coined out. Huckster will be, I mean, kind of countered by this, kind of counterplayed by this loot hoarder, but it will almost certainly be daggered down.
All right, the the plan here for Lochabu is get a fireball off of that Undercity Huckster, so you can just go ahead
Yeah,
and smash the face as hard as possible.
that would be nice. Or an ice block. An ice block would be pretty good too.
Yeah, Ice Block would be pretty nice to be able to just hold off lethal from your opponent. The thing is, I think Shakuchi, if he
Oh,
sees Ice Block from his opponent, oh, that's very interesting.
that's not bad at all.
And he gets wait, he has
Oh,
Alex Straws in his deck.
that
Wait a
is.
second.
Wait a minute. Is this like a dragon death rattle Malagos rogue? I'm not. But Alex Strauss is a very interesting pick. I'm not sure what to think about that one.
It could be, yeah, we might see something like Twilight Guardian. That would be very bizarre though.
Yeah, that would be very unusual. And we're gonna see, yeah, Shaokuchi kind of pause, thinking for a second if he wants to pull the trigger on this Blood Mage Frostbolt to remove it, but ultimately he does decide to. His one consideration was if he preferred to use the Arcane Intellect to draw, but he can use it a lot more neatly next turn and combine it with the Novice Engineer.
All right, Jay, I have to actually run for 2 seconds to take care of something. Can you cast for like 20 seconds?
Yeah, it's yeah. Hopefully, unless something terrible happens. All right, so we do see the redagger happen here for Love Jabu. Likely, we will just see the Arcane Intellect, yeah, and either one of these two drops that cycle. And so yeah, Freeze Mage is kind of doing what Freeze Mage does, drawing and drawing, hoping to draw into damage. They already have the Alexstrasza, kind of want an Ice Block pretty soon just to be absolutely safe. Although now that you've seen the Undercity Huckster as Xiaokuchi, you're probably not super worried about dying quickly. Oh, there's the Ice Block, like we were talking about. He doesn't necessarily need to play it this turn. Yeah, this is a good Emperor Thorson turn because some pretty impactful cards in hand to reduce. The Ice Block will be good to play the next turn. Fireball. Alexstrasza, though, is very important to reduce because it allows you to set your opponent to 15 one turn earlier, or if you're in danger, get yourself to 15 one turn earlier.
All right, I'm back. What did I miss?
You just missed some draws and an Emperor Thorson, and that's it.
All right, so
Not too much.
seems good. Speaking
Yeah,
of,
that's kind of both these decks kind of just draw a lot. That's kind of what they do.
that is certainly true. And you know what? When the players are this still, it kind of worries me that the stream is frozen again. But you always can look at the portraits to see if they're glowing or not. But they're very
Yeah.
focused on the game right now.
All right, so thinking about using this Fan of Knives here, I think that's probably the best option with the spell damage, just to cycle a little bit more. Not going to get too much more value off Fan of Knives ever in this matchup.
Yep, 2 damage fan knives should be fine. You're not going to, obviously, like you mentioned, clear a huge board right here. And picks up, it looks like, yeah, Tomb Pillager. So there's a lot of pressure on the board here for Love Jabu. And this pretty much requires an answer from Shakuchi right now.
Yeah, we may actually see something like we could see a Frost Nova plus the Colt Apothecary because, you're not going to see this many minions on board probably for a while. Although he might be considering that since it's it seems like a slightly more minion-based rogue, he may very well actually see more. But I would be a fan of something like, I think that something like Frost Nova, Colt Apothecary, and the Novice Engineer would have also been a valid draw, but it would have been a valid thing. But at the same time, that is a lot of damage, and might as well get some of it off the board.
I think Shakuchi's a bit afraid of, or he wants to utilize his mana as best as possible because in the future he might need more mana to do things. And like next turn, for instance, he can go ahead and use his Cult Apothecary and the Frost Nova, plus draw some cards at the same time, which is obviously pretty valuable.
Yes, and he's thinking about what order to do this in. I think if he's gonna draw, he definitely wants to draw first. Another Blizzard is pretty good to have.
Yeah, especially because he could have drawn maybe like a Fireball and had 2-turn lethal with Alex.
Yeah, that's very true.
All right, well, he's healed up for 8 this turn, but LeShabu has his own Alex and a Ragnaros. Ragnaros is the bane of Freeze Mage.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see it come out right now. The other option is maybe Sylvanas plus Eviscerate, but then you die to Flame Strike plus the ping. And there you go, takes out that Cult Apothecary, and Shaoguchi has got to be sweating right now.
Yeah, I think you need to draw and hope that you draw into some sort of burn.
What?
Maybe. Oh, Doomsayer not bad, but it
Alright,
will get sapped probably.
so I went from worried about EDG bringing out the rogue to really excited at the fact that they're playing a rogue deck with Rag and Alexstrasza, and I suppose this works pretty well against Freeze Mage.
And Cairn.
Yeah, and Karen
That's
as well.
interesting.
So this is, I guess this is Tempo Rogue. Tempo Rogue,
Huh.
Tempo Nazoth Rogue.
Interesting. Not something I was expecting to see. Gotta be honest.
Gotta expect the unexpected here.
That is very true. So we are going to see the sap on the Doomsayer valuing the Ragnaros,
Kind of
which we
sad.
should.
This Raptor is so sad. One Raptor, copied nothing, and the other Raptor had copied a card draw.
Oh,
Really wanted to copy a 4/5 here. Shakuchi, he doesn't have lethal over 2 turns, does he? Oh wait, he's
he
6,
does.
6, 7, 13, 14. Yeah. He does have
If
lethal next turn.
if Lovejabu doesn't heal, then he will have lethal this next turn.
It feels really bad to heal for 1 though.
Yeah, and that's a weird combo to play around too. I mean, you can't. It's hard to play around like the specifically 14 damage from hand because the more the magic spot is 13 because that's the 2 fireballs plus the ping, and if they do that, then you just have the Alexstrasza to heal you back up. And he is still considering though what to do. If he would Alexstrasza, assuming that he was able to kill off the opposing Alex, that would keep him alive for at least another turn, but it looks like he
Well,
is
he
not
doesn't
going
have.
to go for that line of play, and so Xiao Guqi, I think, just wins.
Yeah, he doesn't have the mana now to be able to kill off the guarantee kill the Alex.
Mhm.
Obviously he can do it with. Oh wait, did he pick up healing? He picked up
Oh,
healing.
he did. Oh,
Wow,
that's actually a big deal.
wow. No, it's a huge deal. You've just picked up healing off of his Raptor, and now he's still in the game, provided Xiaokuchi doesn't pick up any sort of burst. I can't believe he just got Earthen Ring off the top.
Well, that is very fortunate for Lo Shabu, but there are a lot of burn options still in the deck for Shakuchi. He is going to probably Frost Nova Doomsayer, maybe even just play out another potential target for Rag. Get that ping in. Always want to get in as much damage as possible, but he's still going to be 2 off next turn. But he hasn't really used, I think, any burn, so he's probably got a lot in his deck. He even has at least one Forgotten. He has one for Roaring Torch in the deck as well, because so he does have quite a few outs, including any. Oh, I don't think he would want any spell damage.
I was gonna say,
outside.
does Shabu face tank this Ooze to get a better chance at lethal? He does not, which is good for him. Well, let's see what this Rag decides to hit. If he hits the Doomsayer, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Doomsayer! No, he's dead! What a crazy way to end this game. Oh my god, the Ooze lives, and that is just enough for Shaokuchi to finish off the game. Are you
All
kidding
right.
me? Wow.
That is well, Freeze Mage just proving its dominance here, and against some matchups, it managed to avoid things like Cthulhu Warrior because it can't win matchups like that, frankly, and it's not. Yeah, so we do see though the Freeze Mage taking its second or third it's its third consecutive game. So Shakuchi probably feeling pretty good about the decision to bring that one, and do want to give a little bit of a nod to Shakuchi because it's such a hard deck to play, especially the Reno version, and so just very very strong play. I don't think we've really seen any misplays from him, just knowing exactly how to plan out the damage over a couple turns. And so I do have to give the nod to Shakuchi for some very, very good play. Even if he does lose one of these next upcoming games, still extremely good play. So yeah, we do see for the first time, I believe, in this series, one team going up by more than one on the other. So Veteran is currently up 7-5 on EDG. EDG only, and since it is last year standing, EDG only has to get wins, has to not lose these next 2 games, or just has to be able to beat some more decks on the side of of veteran, and so they are going to pull out the druid, having both innervate and wild growth. So thinking about what to mulligan here, probably want to hold on to wild growth.
Yeah. Recently, Yogg Druid has been able, and by the way, this is Yogg Druid. You play Druid in Chinese variant, which I kind of agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the situations where since you have Nourish and Drake in the deck, or in both of each, so you're typically able to find that card draw. Although Lojabu has picked up all of the ramp in his deck, at least all of the early ramp, which makes it a bit difficult for him. So we'll see if he's able to pull out this win. This is what he wants in a way. He wants to get a really fast start, but we'll see what happens here. Picks up a Wrath, which is very unfortunate for him. He wants to be able to ramp in those into the card draw or his larger minions, and he's done neither so far.
Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we see probably just going to see the wild growth come out this turn, and it could even be followed up by the Mire Keeper for even more ramp the following turn.
Yeah, let's see if he does decide to go for that. Looks like we do have a freeze. One moment, please. And
It's the Freeze Mage. Just played too many games now. It's starting to even affect the stream.
yeah, unfortunate.
I guess yet another reason to hate the deck. But all right, so we did miss a couple turns, but it looks like we did see the Acolyte of Pain played as well, and then a Wrath to counter it, and then innervate into Mire Keeper. Probably. Oh no, it's going to be for another minion.
Yeah, picked up Feral Rage, which is very frustrating has to be frustrating for Lojabu. Obviously, Feral Rage can be useful later in the game if he gets Alex Strauss or something like that, but certainly not right now. And he needs to pick up something right off the top.
Yep, and so yeah, not a lot to play in this upcoming turn for. Oh, it looks like he got Raven Idol. Could just go for another Wild Growth, but I mean, you might want to make your board a little bit more durable with this Mark of the Wild. Or Mark of excuse me, sorry. Oh, what's the
See, Freeze Mage has made
Mark of the Wild or
even
Mark of Nature?
Freeze Mage has even made you start Resident Sleeper Ring. Obviously.
Yeah, I guess so. So the one that's not commonly played, whichever one that is.
Mark of Nature.
Mark of Nature, that's it. Because I was stuck between Mark of Nature and Mark of the Wild. But yeah, Savage Roar is going to be picked up. And lots and lots of options here for Xiaoqi. Probably just going to continue the good old Freeze Mage tactic of just drawing and drawing and drawing some more. And going to use one of these Frost Bolts on the Mire Keeper.
Obviously, Xiaoqi is pretty happy to see, a Raven Idol and just a Hero Power last turn, but he doesn't realize how good a position he is in. For instance, if Lojabu had an Ancient War, for instance, in hand, without the Innervate, and he was curving into that, then might be one thing here. But he has nothing to even curve into. All of his cards just need to be off the top from here on out, which is really horrible for him.
Yeah, that is very true. Cult Apothecary here coming out for minimal value, but just getting a body out on board will be removed. Didn't quite see what was drawn there. Will be a Wrath, probably used to cycle because his hand is pretty grim right now. Picking up a Mire Keeper again. Not super exciting. Will probably be played for the Ooze this turn, though, I would imagine.
Yeah, the Slime.
Or the Slime, yeah.
It is just so difficult right now for him, though, because he really wants to just get, Living Roots on the field, on the board, but he obviously knows that Freeze Mage specializes in being able to kill those off. But really no choice for him at the moment. In fact, looks like he's just going to clear this off and not play the Mire Keeper. Maybe he might Innervate into it since he doesn't really have a use for Innervate in the future, barring some sort of Wisp of the Old Gods plus, Soul of the Forest or something crazy like that.
Yeah, alright, so 2/2, facing down a 2/2 on board really isn't, just a single 2/2 Slime isn't that scary. Gonna develop the Ice Block, always good to have out. And that was one of the biggest losses for Freeze Mage in the move over to Standard, was losing the Mad Scientist, because it felt like often when you had the Mad Scientist, you just always had a Ice Block up at some point. But now it's not nearly as guaranteed. Like you do have to usually spend at least part of a turn playing one for the full 3 mana and not just cheating it out with the Mad Scientist. So, but he does find time to weave in, Xiaoqi does find time to weave in that Ice Block play, which is always good to have out. Gives you a little bit more of a feeling of security.
Shakuchi's reaching for the Blizzard. I think it might be a little, even though this is more expensive, his hand doesn't really do anything for a while. So I feel like it might be a bit better to reach for the Frost Nova and play out a couple of Loot Hoarders. Doesn't play out the Mirror Images either. I wonder what he's saving that for. And Love Shabu, oh my goodness. Could it get any worse? The entire rest of Love Shabu's deck is minions. This is just absolutely disgusting to watch for the wrong reasons. And
Yeah,
Shakuchi just gives up a wow. He's like, really? Turn 9, Living Roots Hero Power? What is happening?
that's pretty bad. All right, so we do see Antonidas coming into hand. Can be used in combination with some of these small spells that Freeze Mage has quite a bit of to get a lot of burn for finishing off the game. He's going to choose a Frost Nova this board. I'm kind of wondering exactly. I guess that is if he did have. I guess he's just playing around any sort of out. So Savage Roar would be quite a bit of damage. Do you see Emperor Thorson coming into hand? Decent. It's a decent hand to reduce because now Antonidas could just get massive value. Actually, you could be looking at killing off your opponent in not too long with the. Yeah, Xiaoqiqi could be looking at killing off Lo Xiaobu in not too long. He does have the spell damage in hand. So he is looking at 7 plus 10 plus 4.
21.
So he is looking at 21 damage, not including whatever he would get off Antonidas. So Antonidas actually could potentially next turn get 5 fireballs.
Yeah, would be pretty nice just to get out
Yeah.
on the field. He might actually well, he wouldn't overdrop because he has to play the Antanas out of his hand. So this is looking extremely over for Love Shabu. I don't see any way he can get back into this game. Feral Rage is not nearly going to be enough, obviously, because with 5 fireballs is more than 8.
Yes.
Turns out. He's just going to use. He finally picks up a minion. About 8 turns too late because obviously with quadruple ramp in hand, he could have played that Ancient of War right at the beginning of the game, and now he picks it up on turn 11 or so, 12. It's just absolutely horrible here for Lo Shabu. The rest of his deck is minions. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, actually, we could potentially see Love Jabu pop the ice block this turn, but
He doesn't feel like that's
he
going to
doesn't
be.
choose to. Yeah.
Actually, that probably was his best chance to win, because how are you winning the game from here on out? Your opponent just emperored a bajillion cards. So how do you win unless you don't proc it right now?
Yeah, I'm not really. Yeah, I mean, I think that it would have been hard to win no matter what for Love Shabu, especially when you're going to be facing down 5 fireballs off of Antonidas. I mean, that's just. And no easy way to remove the Antonidas either.
Right, but if you pop the block, and your opponent doesn't have another block, then you can just win the next turn. I think that was Love Shabu's only chance.
Yeah, that is true. And yeah, this is looking really, really bad because even if something weird did happen, Xiaokuchi still has the Reno in hand. So this is definitely very over because that is quite a few fireballs.
Yeah.
Looks like Love Jabu is having some difficulties over there. It hasn't changed turns for him, so we may be seeing a disconnect. Yeah, it looks like we're reconnecting.
Yeah, Nourish is not going to do anything. You're not going to protect yourself from 5 fireballs. He can't even kill the Antonidas. He needs Mulch off the top into like Raven, Idol plus healing. He needs Mulch off the top, and then he needs the very next card to be Yogg, and it needs to be the best Yogg that ever Yogged.
Yes, very much so. And yeah, we're not going to see either of those things happen. I mean, he can use the Feral Rage to armor up, but
I think he wants to find Mulch off of the Raven Idol, but he can't. I guess he's gonna go for Naturalize. He needs to get Naturalized right now, but he's roping already. And he picks the minion first, obviously, when you go for that. Oh, guess the Colette Oracle, which can maybe be useful if you want to. Oh, he gets Raven Idol. Needs to go. I don't care about this minion. Just pick something. Okay, yeah, no Naturalize, so therefore the game is over.
yep, yeah, game's over. And yeah, we are just going to see the concedes. So Freeze Mage from Xiaokuchi taking 4 consecutive games, and it is now down to match point for Xiaokuchi. We are seeing veteran up 8-5, and and this is really big because EDG, if they lose this game, so they need Priest to win the next 4 consecutive games, and that is not a situation anyone wants to be in.
I think all of the casters coming into this, speaking of the people who are familiar with all of these teams, Lorinda and Handboy and myself, were thinking that EDG was going to win this match and then be one of the favorites to win the entire championship, but now they're in trouble. we saw going in that the history of these two teams is that Veteran won both of them 2 points to 1. We're seeing that play out right here, and like you mentioned, Lojabu has to win 4 games in a row with Priest, or else it's going to be Veteran moving on to the semifinals. This match is worth $5,000, by the way. If EDG loses, they get nothing, and Veteran moves on, gets that $5,000, gets the opportunity for $10, even $30,000 potentially if they continue to win. So this is absolutely huge for them.
Yeah, very, very true. So now we do see going into this. This is a typically considered to be a fairly bad matchup for the Priest, just because Priest doesn't do well against combo damage decks, and Freeze Mage is one of just the most prototypical generic combo deck. Very uninteractive. Priest relies a lot on the ability to clear off minions. We do see a Shadow Word Horror. Very interesting. Not something you see every day in a Priest deck. But then again, really, we're seeing a lot of experimentation with Priest decks because what people are doing isn't really working. So a lot of people are just trying to find something new to do.
Yeah, it seems like they went for the polarized option here instead of going for something that kills control or something that does horribly against everything, basically like 30 to 40% against everything. They went for an anti-aggro approach. Obviously, the other side of that is going for the anti-control approach. But yeah, Shadow Word Horror, Doomsayer, Shadow Word Pain. They just wanted to kill the aggro with this deck, but Freeze Mage is not really aggro, unfortunately.
Yeah, so EDG facing elimination from the team story, from the playoffs. If they can't win this game, yeah, we're gonna see EDG will be eliminated, and Veteran will be guaranteed $5,000 and 3rd place in the league, no matter what happens. So yeah, we are looking, and it's looking very much like that could happen unless Priest can pull out a lot of wins all at once. It's going to be very hard, and Lojabu just pushing a lot of damage, so actually not looking terrible for the Priest right now.
Not looking bad at all, actually. And there's I haven't seen a single ice barrier from Shakuchi in the 4th game he's played. So certainly Lojabu could just continue to pile on the damage and perhaps take the win. Obviously, Reno is not even close to being active right now, so yeah, I think Lojabu actually has a chance here.
Yeah, he does, although kind of getting into that Freeze Mage mode where he is going to, I think right now, Shaoguchi just has to focus on removing Alkanai Soul Priest, because that really is the biggest threat to his life right now, is just Alkanais in general. And so he is removing one here, which is very, very good. And so now, because he doesn't really care about any of the healing that Priest does right now at all, because it's just healing minions that will probably die to other things along the way.
Yeah, Lojabu has answers upon answers, but no questions, unfortunately. Second Doomsayer is like literally the last card you want to see, and Shakuchi is just going to go ahead and make sure that he takes care of as much stuff as possible, takes as little damage as possible. Lojabu, I think he uses the Shadow Word Horror at this point, because you might not get you have obviously the Shadow Word Pain, but that's Shadow Word Horror is the more expensive option.
Mm-hmm. But he is going to end up using the Shadow Word Pain. Really no reason not to use the Shadow Word Horror there.
I think maybe you face down like a Loot Holder and 2 Novice Engineers, but yeah, I have to think that that's the best Shadow Word Horror you're going to get.
I mean, Lojabu's probably feeling kind of tilted right now too, to be fair to him, because you're running at least one fairly strong deck a couple of fairly strong decks in the form of the Rogue and the
Druid.
And the Druid, and then you're face down with like one of the worst matchups for both of those types of decks. You're just like, really? This is how it ends, is just Freeze Mage destroying me. And right here, yeah, we could see a really huge Antonidas turn. Just with I think if you're Shakuchi, you're kind of wanting to err on the side of clearing the board over trying to end the game right now, because you are at pretty low health, and you're probably facing down a couple Flash Heals.
I think he's counting whether he has 2-turn lethal here. So he can Antonidas and then go for Fireball face, Frostbolt face, Ice Lance face. And then that would obviously be 13 damage. And then from there he has all the Fireballs in hand, but he doesn't have the time to use them. And yeah. So
actually, yeah, maybe Shadow Word Horror was being saved for this situation.
Right. That could be true. Oh, he's going to use... Okay. Alright, doesn't use the fireballs, instead goes ahead and uses the Forgotten Torch to clear off part of the board so that he isn't in danger of getting his ice block popped right now. Like you mentioned, Shadow Word Horror could be a thing right now, and if we see Embrace the Shadow off the top or an Arcanine off the top, that is not it, however. So I'll probably Embrace the Shadow plus the Shadow Word Death, but kind of tough times here right now for Shaguchi. Or excuse me, for Lo Shabu. He can get his opponent down to 1, but that's not the same thing as popping the block.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is not a good situation. I mean, he still could. I mean, if Shakuchi gets a couple dead draws in a row, this could very easily still go Love Jabu's way. But you'd much rather be Shakuchi right now than Love Jabu, for sure.
So Shaguchi in hand, he does 13 damage a turn, but there's also the wild card of the Thalnos plus the ability to play that extra fireball, so that ends up turning into 15 damage on one turn. And Love Shabu is actually not even going for the horror right now, which means he's not going to put his opponent down to 1. I suppose it ends up being the same thing. Your opponent's on the same kind of clock.
Yeah, because you're probably going to pop the block next turn no matter what, unless Shakuchi does decide to commit a fireball here.
Right. So Shakuchi. Right. Well, on board, Shakuchi, considering Love Shabu hasn't played Justicar, he doesn't have Flash Heal in hand. Shakuchi doesn't know that quite yet. But if he commits 13 damage to the face this turn, and then he has 15 the following turn, and yeah, he's gonna just put the pressure on this way. I think he's better off going for the 3 mana.
Yeah, because then you can win the hero power as well. And I think he's realizing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then assuming that there's no other healing option from Lo Shabu, you just win.
Yeah. So Lo Shabu needs healing right now, or something like Eater of Secrets, or he's dead. And that is not Harrison does not take away secrets. It takes away weapons. Nothing belongs in the museum today. And Veteran is going to pull off the upset. The 4 seed versus the 3 seed. EDG, one of the favorites in these playoffs, can't even kill off his own Shifting Shade to get an ice block, unfortunately. And that's going to do it. Veteran is going to move on to the next match.
And wow, so Freeze Mage also taking 5 wins, 5 consecutive wins. That's really impressive for Shakuchi. Very impressive play we saw from him. Very good matchups, which helped him along. But I actually wonder if maybe Veteran strategy was possibly kind of to sneak in this Freeze Mage and maybe potentially try to set it up so that the Freeze Mage only had good matchups left and then just let it win out the rest of the series.
Is that Ice Fox? I was like, what was that random guy in the green shirt? I'm like, what is that guy doing there? If that indeed was Ice Fox, that's kind of bizarre because Ice Fox was on Team OMG. Anyway, we have veteran, moving on to the round of 3. Since this is a stepladder playoffs, we have the 3rd and 4th place team facing off in the first round, and then that team faces the number 2 team, which is OMG. We'll talk about that when we come back. Lots of money won for Veteran and more money they can possibly win in the future. Be right back after this, folks. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Hearthstone Team Story. We just saw EDG go down to Veteran in our first match of the playoffs. Like we mentioned before, Veteran winning $5,000 at the very least for winning that match. And if they win the next one versus OMG, they guarantee themselves at least $10,000. They win the entire championship, they get $30,000 for their troubles. A lot of money that they have picked up, and unfortunately for you, Jay, we see No Tomorrow very despondent right now, and didn't even get to play today. Wait, no, he did play actually. He lost with the Shaman and Paladin. My mistake. Actually, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, if you lost, yeah, if it's last hero standing, then you have to go through all the players. Anyway, my mistake. So, yeah, EDG not very happy with the situation, and what do you think happened here today? How did Veteran win this game? It seemed like their strategy. Do you think it was just blind luck, or do you think they planned this out to have the Warrior go down and a lot of the Freeze Mage counters go down, and then play the Freeze Mage to just rack up the rest of the wins?
I think it might have been a little bit of luck because you had to assume that, I mean, unless they planned it out somehow super intricately, that it just so happened that all of the really good counters to Freeze Mage, like the Warrior and the Shaman, lost like early on, and it just and the Paladin for that matter, and it just so happened that they got in. I mean, getting in the Freeze Mage when they did, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh man, this could go really, really poorly, really fast for EDG. But I think that it was maybe a little bit lucky that they got in the Freeze Mage when they did, because at that point, EDG, once they saw that was Freeze Mage and not Tempo Mage, they had to be like, oh, that had to be a little bit of a worrying moment because like we don't really have anything left that's that good against it. So I think that was maybe a little bit lucky on their part. Of course, if they did plan it out, then props to them. That was a really, really good plan. I don't know. I don't think that will work in the upcoming matches they have. But props to Veteran for kind of pulling off the upset, being kind of maybe the team that people saw as having gotten into the playoffs by accident versus by virtue of being good, but managing to pull off the win against one of the tournament favorites. So props to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, as far as the freeze mage is concerned, it makes sense in a certain way, even though you don't. In China, Tempo Mage has been thought of as a really good deck for a while. I'm not sure of the opinion nowadays because we've seen in Hearthstone Team Story that it used to be led off with, right? And now they're leading off with Tempo Dragon Warrior, leading off with Druid. So maybe has fallen off a bit into that mid tier at this point. So, but still a bit risky to replace a reasonable deck with something that is very polarized. But if you can just you obviously get to pick that matchup when you play the Freeze Mage and just lead off with that. And obviously there's certain decks that just really struggle against it. So certainly makes sense for them to have the Freeze Mage. And if you can guarantee a win, and hopefully your stronger decks like your Warriors and Shamans and your Zoos can go ahead and be the decks that take multiple wins. But in this case, it was the Freeze Mage certainly that carried. And EDG not too happy, obviously. This is the same spot, I believe, that they lost last year. I think they made it to the semifinals last year when they lost to Yellow Miracle, which is now E-Star. But in any case, they had to be disappointed with it, where they've ended up. They were in first place for a while during the duration of this team league, and kind of hover around first, second, third place around there. Ended up in third for the playoffs. Didn't get to that second seed spot, and now has fallen to Veteran, which is kind of their nemesis at this point. They didn't even realize it going into it because obviously they just lost 2-1 a couple of times, but now this is 3 times in a row that they have lost to Veteran. Let's go ahead and talk about Veteran. They have their lineup today. Obviously, Xiaoguchi, Xiayuan, Magicwin, and Peggy. That's been their lineup for a while now. And ever since, and the thing is with this team, it's kind of just like the band of misfits, right? It's you have Xiaoguchi. He's just kind of he's their team captain, but he's always just kind of been pretty good, not great. But he's set up his game a little bit. He ended up being the last player on that top 10 leaderboard, and kind of the same story for Veteran. They just snuck into the playoffs, and sometimes that can be enough if you can pick up a win, obviously, against your opponent. Xiaoyu and those players who just solid. We didn't actually see him today. They won without him. Peggy, he's a player who obviously been up and down as well. Went to CN versus EU, but dropped out in the group stages. Magicwin, a player who has had an up and down career. Started up by winning the CN versus Korea title. He's been kind of a streamer since then, but been doing reasonable in 2016 as far as competitive exploits are concerned. But yeah, just combine it all together, and they have pretty good teamwork, and that's pretty surprising from them because they lost their arguably best player in Jason Joe at the mid-season. This is a team that used to be Vici. Jason Joe went from Vici over to E-Star, and Jason Joe had at the time, and I think still now, he has one of the best win rates in the entire team league. So lose your best player, still advance to the semifinals, seems good.
Yep. All right. Now we're going to see Veteran looking kind of almost more relieved than happy right now. I got to say, they seem a little bit maybe surprised. I don't know if they expected to win that match, especially not in that specific way. I mean, 9-5 is actually, in a best of 17 format, is kind of dominating. And it was fast, too. It's only been less than 3 hours at this point.
Yeah, I don't think they're even surprised. They're almost yawning. They're we beat EDG again. Everyone thought that we're gonna lose to EDG because they're the higher seed, but we beat them twice. Obviously, we're gonna win a third time. And see Peggy's kind of like their No Tomorrow, I would say. He's very talkative. He typically is on the commentator desk, and you can see very gregarious fellow.
Yeah, he's maybe a little bit friendlier and upbeat than No Tomorrow. No Tomorrow tends to be a little bit more
brash,
little bit more, a little more negative, but
abrasive.
Abrasive. Yeah, that's a good word for it. But No Tomorrow, especially, I was also going to mention, he seemed to have the microphone for a while and seemed very very frustrated by the whole situation. Not sure exactly what he was saying, but
No Tomorrow, when he likes to explain things. So when he wins, he likes to say well, they did this bad and we did this good, so therefore we won. And then when they lose, it's like, well, this should have happened, and then this happened, and he likes, whether he wins or loses, he likes to explain the situation and say like, oh, it's basically assuming the commentator role, and it's like, yeah, this happened, and it should have happened this way maybe, but yeah, this is why we lost or something like that. Never lucky, run the freeze mage. What can you do? But yeah, so well played by Veteran overall. Next match is going to be against OMG, and who do you like in that matchup? I was expecting EDG versus OMG. Now it's going to be Veteran versus OMG. Hopefully the gambling sites get it right this time.
I gotta say, if Veteran can kind of come together tomorrow after this and to keep their heads cool, I think that they're the hot team right now. I mean, they just won kind of an upset, and so they're feeling pretty good. So I'm actually kind of liking Veteran. However, when it comes down to E-Star, if it did come down to E-Star versus Veteran in the finals, I would have to probably give the nod to E-Star just for their level of consistency all through the season.
All right, so there you have it. We have 9-5 in favor of Veteran for today. Tomorrow, it's going to be OMG versus Veteran, and that's going to be at the same exact time, 7 p.m. Chinese time. Just wrapping up this one in just under 3 hours, like you mentioned before. And the winner of OMG versus Veteran is going to face off against E-Star in the finals. That's going to be on Wednesday. I believe our casters for tomorrow, unless there's a last-minute change, are going to be Bloody and Hermes. So look forward to that. And yeah, lots of money on the line. Make sure you guys tune in for this. Make sure you tell your friends. Obviously, we've been trying to get the viewer numbers up for this entire time, but would love to get that viewer number skyrocketing for this very important series. Maybe people a bit Hearthstoned out after the Seat Story Cup weekend, but everyone get in here for these finals. There are a lot of money on the line and very good players playing as well. Again, just to reiterate, Veteran and OMG have secured themselves $5,000 already. The winner secures $10,000, and the winner of the tournament gets $30,000. Lots of stuff on the line here. And Jay, anything you want to say before we head out?
Oh, just kind of fun to see Veteran win, kind of the Cinderella story that we almost saw over the weekend in the form of at Seat Story in the form of Jackie Chan. But maybe Veteran can be the ones to pull it off this time.
Absolutely. So definitely looking forward to that. OMG versus Veteran, winner versus E-Star. Make sure you guys tune in, and we'll see you guys later. Good night.